Events begin at the estate of the Grand Duke Crito, and now one of the people in the palace is knocking on the office. It turns out to be a young lady, and she tells his lordship that she is coming in, after which she claims that a private mercenary is at his service. The man then folds his hands and claims that the young lady's fame precedes her, and as far as he knows, they do not fail on missions. Although he usually does not take such orders, it is very important for him, so he asks the girl for help. The girl then looks at the order and analyzes it with a cold gaze. She understands that she needs to find this person. After all, she is his daughter. The young lady then looks at him and wonders if he is serious. After all, if the Duke gave her this task, then it looks like he really doesn't know anything. The girl realizes that she has not heard the name Cornelia Crito for many years. And after she ran away from home in pursuit of love, she often apologized, sending letters to her family. Even during her illness, from which she later fell into eternal sleep, there was still no answer from the family. And now the young lady is wondering if after that he decided to find his daughter. However, the girl then asks if he even wanted to look for her. However, the Duke then does not understand what she is talking about and asks about it. But the young lady then asks why he never answered the girl he was looking for, and the man becomes even more confused and then says that she didn't send anything. However, the young lady says that she is very sorry, but Cornelia Crito fell into eternal sleep. After which the main character screams that the goth girl sent letters asking for forgiveness, and plunged into eternal sleep and never received an answer. However, the man then almost shakes and asks if the girl is saying that Cornelia is no longer alive. However, then she hears someone clapping their hands, and then turning around and looking there. The man who does this says that they have finally met, but the Duke only asks what Daniel is doing there. However, the man, with the help of a servant, lights his cigarette and claims that he believes they did not properly introduce themselves to each other. And after all, the girl is his granddaughter, after which the man asks if his brother wants to hug her. However, the Duke then asks in shock what he is talking about. And the main character also asks who he is, after which the man answers that he is her cousin and then asks where they are staying because the Duke has already been told about Cornelia's letters. But the main character then looks at him a little angrily and asks how he knows about the letters. Well, in response, she only hears that he intercepted them just to make sure that her brother would not forgive this woman. Otherwise, this would have ruined his plan, and the main character then asks if the Duke really ignored his mother's letter and simply did not receive them. And at this time, the man clenches his fists and asks his brother why he is only talking about this now. The main character then realizes that this will not lead to anything good and reaches for the sword in her coat. She thinks that she will never forgive this man, but the Duke's brother only screams that all this is to take their lives. And now, while the servants are running towards two relatives, the young lady is preparing for battle. However, that man says that I shouldn't resist and just accept my fate, because then it will become easier for her. The young lady's grandfather then screams for her to run away because there is no need to fight for him. However, the main character only asks his lordship if he loved her mother, and the man then claims that she was everything to him, and he never held a grudge against her, after which the main character waves her sword and says that this is enough for her. But when the girl tries to put one of them into eternal sleep, she is suddenly surrounded, and one of the mercenaries then points his sword at her, and then plunges it into the girl, and the main character at that very moment realized that this was her end, and the girl was never able to avenge her mother, after which the young lady begins to lose her strength, and when she falls, she thinks only about her mother. The young lady understands that her body is so heavy, as if she is drowning, and she was never afraid that she would plunge into eternal sleep, but she was afraid of not avenging her mother, and the young lady thinks that she would be given another chance. However, at the same moment her hand trembles because this is not the first time someone is calling her. The young lady tries to open her eyes and thinks that this face is very familiar. And when Mirabelle can already look normally, she sees that it is her mother, after which the girl immediately jumps out of her bed. And he hugs his mother and then, in shock, asks if it's really her. The woman is then a little puzzled by her daughter's behavior and asks if something happened and if she had a nightmare, after which she also asks if the girl is okay and she replies that yes. The young lady also realizes that the face is all so familiar. Well, something is clearly wrong. And when the young lady looks at her hand, she wonders if her palms have always been so small, after which the girl suddenly comes to the realization that most likely she has shrunk. And the young lady then turns around and, still perplexed, goes to the mirror and then looks at her reflection. But when a girl does this, she only has more questions, after which she turns to her mother and asks how old she is now. The woman then wonders if everything is okay with her daughter and worries a little about her. Then he asks what this girl is talking about because yesterday she turned 9 years old, but the main game still doesn't understand me. What's going on? But a little later, her mother tells her everything, and the girl just eats the food on both cheeks. Holding out another spoonful of delicious soup to her mouth, the girl realizes that she really plunged into eternal sleep. But for some unknown reason, she returned to the body of her 9-year-old self when her mother was still alive. But it is not clear to the main character who or what sent her to the past. However, the main thing is that she was given another chance. First, she had to find a medicine to cure her mother, and there were only a few months left before she left this world. And now, as she continues to eat, the girl understands that in a past life she had to watch her mother plunge into eternal sleep, and she could not do anything. However, she thinks that this time things should be different. And the girl also understands that now the desire to avenge her mother should have burned in her even more. But her goal has changed, and the man spoke sincerely when he asked to find his daughter. 3 of them turned out to be victims deceived by that man named Daniel. And the main character now strongly thinks that the time has come for revenge and it's time to change the future, because now the main goal of her life is to cure her mother and bring justice to Daniel. This means that she needs to meet with the Duke, and now the main character is asking her mother if she is busy today. But the woman says no, and she planned to stay at home, and then the girl asks if she said that she has a grandfather. And the young lady's mother then replies that yes, that's true. But the little girl then just asks if they can meet him today. After which the young lady takes her mother's hand, but she claims that she thinks it is impossible. After all, she did something that he could never forgive her for. And the main character at this time thinks, what if the woman cannot go with her? Then she must meet him herself. And the young lady has a schedule of caravans leading to the capital, so she just needs to slip there unnoticed. After her mother plunged into eternal sleep, the girl had to live on the streets begging and avoid other homeless people. Therefore, now moving around unnoticed is not so difficult for her. However, the girl thinks that this will not happen again. And a little later, she already sees the inside of one of the carts and thinks that she can hide like that. After all, she just needs to throw a cloth over herself and ride off on a cart. However, then someone orders one of the workers to check the caravan before departure, to which he agrees. The main character then thinks that she is lucky because she was not noticed. But suddenly the girl realizes that there is something living in the cart and wonders what it is, and whether it could be a rat. However, it turns out to be some man because the young lady sees his shoes and he just asks who is there. The girl then lifts the cloth, but when she does this, she looks at the man with enthusiasm and asks if it's him. It turns out to be a boy with silver hair and blue eyes. But the main character thinks what it is. It looks like he's hiding there too. But the girl then says that before asking a person who he is, he needs to introduce himself. And the boy then, with a slight blush on his face, remained a little silent, and then stated that his name was Jeffrey Coleman. The main character then remembers this name and thinks that he was the most famous mercenary on the continent, and they say that the detachment he founded was at the level of the Order of Reina, which are a detachment of royal knights, and besides, because of his influence, he received the title. The king of mercenaries was not only strong but also cared for others and was famous for his reliability. The main character understands that when she was a mercenary, he really wanted the girl to join his squad. And now the young lady realizes that she now recognizes his face, but the boy only asks if she now wants to tell him her name and asks why she is giggling. The main character then says that exactly, and she also needs to introduce herself. And then she says her name is Mirabelle Hale. The girl understands that her parents gave her this name and it suits her perfectly. The boy then repeats the name and says that it is very beautiful, and the main character is a little surprised by this, but then widening the corners of her lips in a warm smile says that she agrees with this. The boy then wonders why the little girl is hiding there, and the main character thinks that she should ask him because he is the future king of mercenaries. Well, the young lady claims that she needs a new free carriage to go to the capital. The family did not have a free one and then asks what about him. However, the guy then says that he is being chased by guards, and the girl then asks in shock how this can be and why a little boy can be chased by a guard. The guy asks who the little boy is because the girl is clearly younger than him. And the main character understands that Jeffrey is 2 years older, and she has forgotten that she is no longer 26 years old. after which the girl apologizes and says that she takes back her words, to which the young man replies that he forgives. But then he just looks at her silently and then says what he really is. He put someone into eternal sleep, and it was a man named Gaiman from the Shershan estate, and his parents borrowed money from him, but they could not pay it back, which is why the man beat them to exhaustion. The boy, seeing that his parents were no longer breathing, told the guards about what this man had done. But they blamed his parents and said that they should not have borrowed the money at all. The man who plunged the boy's parents into eternal sleep a little later asked if he had told the guard about him. But he took pity on his little ass, and this is how the boy repaid him. After which, when the man saw the young man, he immediately extended his hand to his head and argued that perhaps he should join his parents and asked if he agreed. So the boy now claims that he has taken matters into his own hands, and the main character apologizes and says that this is probably a sore subject for him. Well, the young man says that it's okay because he took revenge on one man, and he asks if the girl can now tell why she is going to the capital. The young lady then claims that she wants to meet her mom's father without her, and the boy then asks if she wants to meet her grandfather and then asks if her mother knows about it. The main character then, a little puzzled, says that no, and she didn't ask permission, and she, the boy, then screams in a whisper, "What is she talking about?" And at least he understands how worried the woman will be, after which the boy tells her to come back, and the main character understands that he is absolutely right. However, when she turns around and looks outside, she realizes that everything is so, after which the young lady turns around and says that it's true because the woman will definitely worry. But the little girl understands that she cannot lose her a second time or cannot just let her go. The young lady remembers how sad she was when she saw that her mother was already lying without breathing, and now she understands that she knows what she is doing. The boy turns to the young lady and asks if this is really so important. The main character, with a smile on her face, replies that, of course, this is a very important task for her. And the boy, looking at her, is a little embarrassed, but then clears his throat and says that then it's okay because he just hopes that the girl will get to the capital safe and sound, after which the young lady says that she hopes so too. The girl also strokes the boy's silver hair and thanks Togo for his understanding, but then assumes that he was just worried about her. However, the young man becomes a little wary of such actions and tells her to stop. However, when the young lady does not stop, he only shyly calls her by name and asks her to stop. But suddenly the guy's stomach growls and the girl asks if he's hungry. The young man replies that no, and that it's probably the wheels that are squeaking. The main character thinks that at least they weren't found, but she understands that the boy must have been starving all this time. She realizes that she has some food, but she wanted to save it for the road. However, the main character still hands the potato to the guy and tells him to hold it. The boy then swallows saliva because he really wants to eat these potatoes. However, when the main character is already putting food in his hands, the boy asks a little worriedly how she can do it, and the girl tells him not to worry because she took 3 more of these, and then tells him to eat and believe they have a long road ahead. The main character understands that if the future does not change, he will become a successful mercenary, but she understands that this does not mean that the guy will not sleep at night and will go hungry. So the girl thinks that it will be better if he eats and sleeps now. However, suddenly the main character hears some strange sounds when she looks up. Then he sees that the guy is looking at the potatoes in tears and then thanks her. A short time later, having finished eating, a young man with silver hair and a slight blush on his cheeks promises that he will pay her for these potatoes. But the main character says that it's just potatoes, so don't let him worry so much, but the guy says that it's not like that. Then he asks if she understands and claims that his parents had to borrow money from Gaiman because he always complained about hunger. And so now the guy extends his hand and says that he no longer wants to be in debt for food, even if it costs him his life. The guy with silver hair says that he might not have survived from hunger if not for the young lady. And Mirabelle then, with a smile on her face, says that it's good and she hopes that the guy will repay her twice in the future, to which the boy just smiles and says that he will try. A short time later, the cart already stops in one town, and the boy helps the main character get off the cart and claims that they have arrived so they can leave. A little time later, they are already running away from her with all their might, and the main character says that she thinks there is no need to run anymore because they are already far away, and the boy claims that they really got to the capital. After which he thanks Mirabelle for everything and asks her to promise him that after meeting with her grandfather, she will return home because her mother is probably terribly worried. The main character then just strokes the guy on the head and says what a good boy he is, to which the young man is a little surprised. And the young lady then says that this concerns him too, so let him take care of himself, and Mirabelle says that she hopes that they will meet again someday. But when the young people turn around and leave, the young man screams that he will really repay her for those potatoes, so let her wait. Mirabelle is a little surprised then, but then she turns to him and smiles. Then she says that she understood and let him not forget about the rest of the potatoes, which she did not share. To which the guy says that he won't forget. The main character then thinks that she does not know when or how, but she is sure that she will meet him again. And this means that she definitely needs to do what she came for. After which the young lady approaches one of the knights and apologizes, but claims that she would like to ask about the meeting with the Grand Duke Credo. The man then asks, a little surprised, if the girl is really going to meet Duke Credo, and the girl then only nods. But the knight claims that it is pointless to ask about this, but still decides to ask. What noble house does she come from? The baby then says that she is not from any, but she really needs to meet him. And the man then apologizes to the little girl and claims that his lordship is very busy with state affairs, so she needs to make an appointment in advance. Well, then one man comes up from behind and asks if they have any problems, and the main characters don't understand that this is a very familiar voice. The servant at this time turns to my Lord Credo and says that there are no problems, and this child said that she wanted to meet him, but he was just about to send her back. The Duke then says that this is an excellent job and then moves on. However, then the main character screams out her mother's first and last name. The girl understands that she urgently needs help, so there is no time to explain, and she claims that her mother's name is Cornelia Credo and she needs help. However, the man then only turns to her and coldly asks if the girl now understands whose name she just said, to which the little girl answers yes. She says that she knows that this woman is his lordship's missing daughter, and her mother told her everything, so he can meet her himself if he doesn't believe it. The young lady no longer even notices how her emotions get the better of her, and she still says that the woman lives in the village of Delphia, and they can get there in 3 days by cart. However, the girl also says that she needs to hurry because her mother is very sick right now. The Duke is a little surprised by this and wonders whether he should believe the little girl because she doesn't look like she's lying. The young lady then just screams out to help her mother, and she realizes that she thought that she would not cry anymore. Well now, while the crystal tears fall to the floor, the main character understands that the thought that she will lose her mother again haunts her, and the girl is ready for anything. The young lady understands that she will kneel and beg, then someone puts a hand on her head. It turns out to be the Duke, and he claims that then they won't keep her waiting. After which he turns to one of the servants and claims that he wants to know if the girl is telling the truth, so let them change his schedule. The servant agrees to this and tells his lordship that it will be done and he will prepare the carriage. The man then turns to the little girl and says that she must be tired from the station, so he invites her to go and states that they will go to the village as soon as they finish the preparations. A little time later, the two of them are already sitting at the table, and the Duke, looking at the baby, is thinking about something. Well, then he claims that he may seem insincere because he doesn't even know where his daughter is now. But as a father, he will say that all parents want their children to live happily. The Duke claims that he is sure that this is exactly what her mother is praying for, and the main character then thought that he seemed to know what she was feeling now. And the young lady blames herself for leaving her sick mother and enjoying such a luxurious dinner here. But it seems the Duke still doesn't believe that her mother is Cornelia Credo. Well, this is understandable. After all, many people appeared claiming that they knew where his missing daughter was, and each such false visit tore his heart into pieces, and now he is no longer able to trust people. Well, the main character thinks that his words were sincere, and the girl abandoned the Duke, as well as his home, to be with her father, and yet he prays for the woman's happiness and has been praying for exactly this all this time. And the girl understands that he is right, because her mother would not want her to return home hungry and sick, so she needs to eat. After which the young lady puts food into her mouth, and the Duke just calmly watches. A short time later, they are already getting into the carriage, and the Duke helps the girl get into it. The young lady, holding her grandfather's hand, thanks him, and a little time later, they are already sitting opposite each other in a luxurious wooden carriage. The main character, then looking at her grandfather, thinks that the Grand Duke Credo is much kinder than she thought, and he does not believe that Cordelia Credo is her real mother. But still he decided to go with her on a long journey to her village. And the main character understands that she hated him all her life, but now that she knows the truth, the hatred has disappeared. And the girl then thinks that she even feels a little sorry for him. After all, the man missed his daughter all his life, and finally fell into eternal sleep that day, when I found out that she was no longer alive. Well, the main character then understands that before he called her as his child, and the girl realizes that it wasn't so bad to hear that. A little time later, when the two are sitting near the fire, the man claims that he would be very happy if there was a girl who really turned out to be his granddaughter. But he claims that he understands perfectly well that she overheard this name somewhere and decided to take advantage of it. He claims that he does not blame the young lady and knew about it from the very beginning, but he felt her despair and sincere desire to help her mother. But he claims that just the name of his daughter wounds his heart, and he has had this wound for many years. The man claims that nothing would have happened because of this if he had listened to her then. But now he claims he has no one to blame, except for yourself and your greed. And the young ladies understand that Duke Credo did not give details, but she knew what he meant. After all, Cornelia Credo was engaged to the current Emperor James Bazet Castro. However, she fell in love with her personal guard, Guile Houston, and wished to annul her engagement to the Emperor in order to marry Guile, but her desire was never approved, and in despair the girl ran away with her beloved. But the main character understands that, unfortunately, her father fell into eternal sleep in a battle with a demon in the forest, and her mother is raising her alone. However, Mirabelle understands that if it were not for Daniel's conspiracy, my mother's letters would have reached the Grand Duke. And now looking at a man who clearly feels mentally exhausted, the young lady places her hand on his and looks at the man a little worriedly. The Duke just smiles back at her and thanks her, after which he turns around and tells the girl not to worry, because he will be happy to help her and her family even if her mother is not his Cornelia. However, the main character thinks that he is mistaken and that her mother is the one he has been looking for all these years, so he will finally be able to see his beloved daughter, and this is what she wanted to say, but could not. A short time later, the young lady already leads the Duke to one of the houses, and he claims that this is his and his mother's house, and the man then wonders if the girl and her sick mother are living there alone in this destroyed house. After which he goes inside, and the main character then turns to her mother and says that it is she. The woman then doesn't feel very well. She goes out into the corridor, but when she sees her daughter, then he immediately runs up to her and hugs her, saying that it's really her. The woman then asks if the girl has any idea how worried she was, and then he also asks if the baby is okay, and if she's not hurt anywhere. Mirabelle then apologizes to her mother, but tells her not to worry because everything is fine with her. And the woman then leans her baby's forehead and says that this is the main thing. At this time, the man with shaking hands drops his staff and then falls to his knees. He, looking at the woman, asks if this is really Cornelia. He asks again if this is really his daughter. The woman then, with tears in her eyes, tells her father that it really is she, Cornelia. And then the man himself cannot hold back his tears and immediately hugs his daughter. The woman then apologizes to her father and says she is so sorry. The main character watches this reunion and thinks that now everything should get better. And a little time later, when they had already cried their eyes out, the Duke asks why the girl is there alone and where is Guile. And Cornelia then turns to her father and says that he fell into eternal sleep 4 years ago while protecting the village. The man then just puts his hand on his forehead and sighs heavily, and the woman then apologizes to her dad. But the man then says that this is not what he's talking about at all, and that it's just that the girl has been suffering alone for so long in such a place. After which he points to the baby and says that Mirabelle said that she was very sick, after which he asks if this is true. And the woman then remains a little silent and thinks about whether it is worth talking about it, but still decides to tell the truth and claims that it is so. The man then claims that she should have come to him right away and asks why she didn't come. But then the main character bursts into the conversation, and she worriedly says that her mother wanted him to forgive her and wrote him a letter many times, but never received an answer, and therefore decided that he was still offended by her and therefore could not come. The man then asks if his daughter wrote to him, but he had no idea, and the main character understands that obviously Daniel made sure that he never saw this letter. The Duke also says that they still have much to discuss, but claims that they need to return to the estate first. After all, there they will be able to calmly discuss everything, and now they should hurry up. After all, the daughter should be cured as soon as possible, and the woman then thanks the father, and then claims that she will collect all the tea, so she asks if he could wait a little. Well, the man then claims that he will ask someone to help, so let the child not tense up. A little time later, the woman turns to her daughter and asks if she can come there for a second, after which the main character turns around and comes closer. And the mother asks if the girl brought her grandfather there because she was worried about her, and I believe the little girl is so brave. So now she thanks her and apologizes for putting such a burden on her. But she claims that next time the baby should not do anything so dangerous because she is obliged to take care of her. And Mom claims that nothing is more important to her than Mirabelle's safety, to which the little girl answers well, and she understood. After this, the woman already leaves the house with the box, and the Duke then says that she should have given everything to the footman. Well, the woman then claims that these things are gala and she wants to carry them herself. Also, they are not that heavy. After which the Duke says that only if she wants it, to which the woman thanks him, and the main character is heading somewhere at that time. The man at this time says that the carriage is waiting for them at the entrance to the village, and the main character understands that she needs to leave them. The woman then turns to Mirabelle and says that's why her hands are full. Let her take her grandfather's hand, and the young lady will be a little puzzled by this. Then think about whether the woman really wants them to get closer. But the girl then nevertheless extends her hand and asks his lordship if he will give his. Well, the man agrees and extends his hand, after which the two of them are already heading to the carriage, and the woman, watching them, gets a little upset and wonders if the baby's grandfather is still his lordship. When they are already in the carriage, the Duke turns to the young lady and says that he should have said this earlier, but he thanks Mirabelle and claims that if it weren't for her, he would never have found Cornelia. The main character then turns to his lordship and says that she does not deserve this, and if his lordship did not trust her, then this would not have happened. She understands that from the very beginning, the Grand Duke Credo did not believe that her mother would really be Cornelia Credo, but it was his kindness to the helpless peasant child. She united them all, and the man retained kindness in his heart even after the loss of his daughter. Therefore, the main character is sure that he deserves more. For the next 3 days in the carriage, Mother and the Grand Duke told each other stories about what had happened to them over all these years. Mom talked about how she loved her father and why she ran away, and also about how she blamed herself all this time. In turn, the Grand Duke said that he understood a lot and selfishness, as well as greed, drove his decisions, but he greatly regretted it. And although they lost each other for many years, the meeting was quite pleasant. And a little time later, they were already near the estate. And the main character, heading towards him, understood that now they would live there. The girl also understands that she must cure her mother and change the future. The Grand Duke takes care of her mother's illness, and she must deal with the rest, and the girl understands that in general she is the only one out there. But then someone meets them and addresses his lordship. This man asks if what was in the letter is true and if they have found Cornelia. And then the man, looking at Cornelia with a warm smile, says that it's really her. After which, the man approaches the girl and asks where she was all this time, and why she didn't contact him, and whether she even understands how worried he was. The woman then just apologizes, and the man then sighs and says that now she's back, and that's the main thing. But then he also asks who this child is next to her, and Cornelia then claims that she and Guile have a daughter. After which, she turns to her baby and tells her to say hello because this is Uncle Brian, who is the Duke of the House of Crichton. And the girl then introduces herself and then says that she is glad to meet him. The man then says that this is amazing and the girl is so similar to her mother, and it's very nice to finally meet Mirabelle. Therefore, the man claims that from now on she can call him Uncle and strokes the girl on the head. After he pulls away, the young lady touches the place where he has now touched. And the man also claims that he actually has a son about the girl's age. After which he turns to Elliot and tells him to say hello. After which the boy comes a little closer and says that he is glad to meet his aunt. He also states that his name is Elliot Crichton. After which the man points to the baby and says that this is Mirabelle and she is his cousin, so the boy should be polite to her. After which the young man approaches the girl and greets her, after which he once again says his name and also says that he is pleased to meet you. Then the two kids shake hands and the main character says her name. She also says that she is glad to meet you and the boy smiles in response. The main character's grandfather then suggests going inside because Cornelia and Mirabelle are probably tired. The man also turns to the baby and apologizes, and he asks if she could stay in Cornelia's room today because he told them to prepare a room for her, but more time is needed. The girl then tells his lordship that she doesn't mind, and the mother then turns to the baby and says that she is tired. Mirabel claims that she is fine, and in any case, they can rest a little. The woman then says that, and even then they can go inside because Mommy will sing her a lullaby. The main character then thinks that perhaps she was mistaken about the Crichton house because the people there are much kinder than she expected. A little while later, while the birds are singing on the street, the doctor looks at the young lady's mother, and their duke asks what's wrong with his daughter. The priest then states that she will need therapy and treatment for 3 months. The main character understands that the Grand Duke summoned the high priest from the Temple of Dana to treat her mother's illness. Goddess Danua is the mother of all gods, and the priests who serve her are endowed with the ability to heal people. But even with an experienced high priest, healing her mother will take 3 months. But the young lady will then have a little trouble deciding whether her mother will be able to fully recover. And the Duke at this time asks the priest if it is possible to completely heal the woman. But he only says with a smile on his face that his lordship does not doubt that after 3 months of treatment, Lady Cornelia can count on a complete recovery. However, then he turns to the baby and says that he would like to examine Miss Mirabel, and the woman then asks what he means. The priest then claims that Lady Cornelia's disease is named Hazel, and that it is a genetic disease, and although they cannot say for sure whether it is passed on to descendants, according to statistics, such cases are not isolated. After which the Duke turns to the priest and asks if he could then examine Mirabel, to which the man agrees, and the main character thinks that in her past life she did not have any illnesses. And the priest at this time asks if he can take the young lady's hand, and then does so, and he begins to use his powers. However, when he does this, he's a little surprised. The young lady does not understand why he, the sanctified, claims that this is impossible. When he finishes the examination, he states that, fortunately, Miss Mirabel has no signs of illness, and, on the contrary, she is endowed with the ability to use divine power. The main character is then a little surprised. And the priest then turns to Miss Mirabel and asks if she would like to visit the temple someday, or if the girl can use divine power. The main character is then a little puzzled, wondering if she really can use it, and if something has really changed in her when she traveled to the past, because before she had nothing like this. The young lady then turns to the priest and asks if this means that she can heal people, like he and even her mother's illness. The priest then claims that her mother's illness is quite rare and difficult to treat, but he is sure that one day the girl will be able to cure her too. The main character thinks that if only she had acquired this ability earlier, she would never have allowed her mother to so helplessly fall into eternal sleep, after which the young lady clenches her fist and thinks that this time she will save her. And the girl then turns to His Holiness and also claims that she will definitely visit him, to which the man replies that this is wonderful and he will wait for her in the temple. That same evening at the table, the Duke says that, thank God, the disease is curable, and another man sitting there agrees. He also says that the guys have not gone to breakfast for so long that he has already begun to prepare for the worst. The young lady's mother at this time claims that it's all thanks to her little Mirabel, because if it wasn't a girl, then it would be much worse. She, the main character, is then a little embarrassed. Well, when she looks at the boy, she thinks, why is he staring at her like that? And the young lady's mother's brother then turns to his niece. The young lady then thinks what her uncle wants and asks him about it. But the man only asks how she slept last night. The girl then says that it was very convenient and thanks him. And the man then says that this is great, and if she doesn't like something, then he asks her not to be shy and tell him about it. To which the main character agrees, but she herself thinks that Brian's face makes her feel uncomfortable. And after all, he is known as the Iron Duke, callous and indifferent. But the most important thing was what she saw during the expedition to exterminate the demons, and these were his eyes, thirsty for the scarlet liquid and the cruelty that emanated from him after he dealt with the demons. Young ladies still cannot forget that Iron Duke. The man now claims that the baby looks like Cornelia as a child because she is such a pretty and such a smart girl. She made all the way to the Crichton mansion on her own. The main character thinks that he praises her like a chatty grandmother, and the man continues to talk and claims that he is talking about this not only because she is his niece, but in fact he would gladly boast to the whole world about how incredible he is niece. However, suddenly the man addresses her in a slightly gloomy tone, and the main character then wonders in shock what happened. But her mother's brother then asks, a little puzzled, if it's hard for the little ones to communicate with him, to which the girl is a little puzzled. But the man then claims that nothing can be done, and she didn't even know that she had an uncle. Everything must be so unexpected and frightening for her, so he apologizes and says that in fact, the children in their district run away in fear when they see him. And he tried his best to be friendlier, but apparently it didn't work, so he asks you to just know that he really wants to be kind, and the main character, remembering his face, says that he has nothing to apologize for. The young lady's mother at this time turns to the man and says that it's not his face and that he just needs to work on his emotions, after which the man asks if this is true, and the woman replies that she always said that he has a terribly blank expression on his face. However, then the Duke turns to Brian and asks Togo not to do this to his friends because his dear Mirabelle has already suffered enough. And at this time, the main character thinks that in fact her uncle is not to blame. At this time, the boy turns to his father and says that his face scared Mirabelle and the girl lost her appetite. And the main character at this time thinks that this is actually true. But she tells her uncle with a slightly forced smile on her face that she's fine and she's just trying to get used to it there. So she'll get used to it over time. The man then, with a smile on his face, says that only his dear niece is on his side. So he thanks her for this and states that if anyone threatens her, then let her immediately turn to him. After all, he assures that the fate of this person will be much worse than immersion in eternal sleep. The boy then turns to his father and says that he is again on his own, because you can't console someone with such a face. However, the man then turns to his son and says that he is waiting for him at training today, which makes the boy a little surprised and claims that he would have thought that she was not there today. But his father then says that he made a mistake in the bedroom. The main character, I hear this, can't help but smile. She understands that she is still not used to the local environment. Well, they all seem to be kind and caring people. While the young lady is looking at the interior of the mansion, the Duke turns to his granddaughter calling her darling, and the main character thinks that she just can't get used to him calling her beloved or darling, although in a past life she considered him her sworn enemy. The man now asks that maybe the baby wants something, and if so, let her just tell him. Then he asks if he wants to know what she wants. And the man claims that he never had the opportunity to pamper his other granddaughter, and he missed out on a lot. So he doesn't know where to start, so he asks her to tell her what the girl dreams of. The young lady then thinks that her mother's illness will soon pass, but it's too early to remember about Daniel and nothing comes to her mind. However, then the main character suddenly remembers something, and she thinks that it would be great if she could help Jeffrey, and at least he would become the king of mercenaries on his own. Well, she doesn't want the guy to live through all this in this life, so the little girl understands that if she helps him now, perhaps he will return the favor in the future. However, then the young lady looks a little thoughtful, and the Duke turns to her asking if something is wrong. The young lady then asks for forgiveness, and then claims that there is a boy she met on the way to the estate. And although they were together for a short time, they became closer over the conversation. The girl also claims that she seems to be stalking him, and then asks the Duke if he could help him. The man then says that it's clear, after which he asks if the baby knows his name or any information that can help find him. The main character then replies that his name is Jeffrey Coleman and he is from Sharon. He is only 2 years older than her and has silver hair as well as blue eyes. The man then says that if the boy was 2 years older than her, that means he is 11 and he is so young. But the man claims that he is sure this is some kind of misunderstanding or misfortune. Then he claims that he will take care of it, and if everything goes smoothly, they will stop looking for him. The main character then thanks his lordship with a smile on her face, and she herself thinks that thank God he agreed to believe, although this will definitely help Jeffrey a little. But then she sees the Duke putting his hand on your heart and is a little surprised. And the man then turns to Cornelia and says that late last night they received a letter from the Emperor, and he has no idea how he knew about her return, but asks to visit him as soon as possible. The woman then thinks about the Emperor and then asks, does the father mean James Bazet Castro? And most likely it is him. After all, because of her, the man suffered terrible humiliation, and she could not predict this. After which the young lady's mother states that she would like to visit him tomorrow, and her father claims that if the girl allows it, he will inform them. Cornelia then agrees and once again apologizes to her father for all the suffering she caused him, and also apologizes to her brother and claims that she is sorry. However, the Duke then turns to his daughter and claims that this is not necessary because they are immensely glad that Cornelia returned home safe and sound. After all, he supports his father and says that if the girl wants, that he will accompany her during her visit to the Emperor, and the woman then, with a smile on her face, thanks him for the proposal, but claims that this should only be between the two of them. The main character, looking at her mother, thinks that it is so nice to see her smile again. But then, looking at the cake in her hand, the girl thinks how delicious it is, and it's completely different from the ones she ate in a past life. At this time, the young lady's mother turns to her and asks if the little girl likes egg tart, to which the girl agrees, but then the Duke raises his hand and asks if they heard. After all, his granddaughter demands more egg tarts, after which the servant tells his lordship that they will bring them right away, and the main character is a little puzzled, wondering what he is talking about. After which the young lady already sees 3 plates with goodies in front of her. Well, she turns to his lordship and says that it was not worth it. However, the man then, with his bright smile, asks if she would like more cakes, because if so, let her enjoy it. The man also tells Mirabelle that if she wants anything, he will give her everything. After which the young lady, with a smile on her face, begins to eat the delicious food. A short time later, someone tells the young lady that they have prepared a dress especially for her. And the main character then thinks that the dream is becoming a reality, and her mother is alive. But the girl thinks that if she had gone back even further last time, she might have been able to save her father. At this time, the mother turns to Mirabelle, and the girl asks what it is. The woman claims that she is going to meet the Emperor today. Then he asks if the baby will go with her, and she agrees. The main character thinks that, in truth, she already knows the answer to this question. Meanwhile, the young lady's mother claims that she told Brian that she would be fine, but I was still a little scared. However, now that they are nearby, she is much calmer. Mirabelle realizes that she was too young to do anything when her father fell into eternal sleep, so she turns to her mother and says that she will always be with her. The woman apologizes to the baby for not being able to do more for her, but from that moment on she claims that she will take care of Mirabelle. And Mirabelle at this time thinks that she will definitely do everything to protect her mother. A short time later, they are already in the palace and someone turns to Lady Cornelia. The woman claims that she is glad to see Tennervan again, after which the man kisses her hand and says that he received news of her return, and also asks how she is doing. The young lady's mother says that's not bad and thanks him, but claims that it looks like he was promoted in her absence. The man then tells Milady that it's all right. He commands the royal guard, so he asks to be allowed to escort her. After all, His Majesty is waiting, and a little time later the knight already informs His Majesty that Cornelia Credo has come to see him, so let him let her in. The woman then looks a little tense, and the main character wonders if she is okay, after which the door to the room opens, and the main character sees His Majesty, after which she and her mother come in and greet His Majesty. But the man only says that Cornelia was late, and he was still waiting for her then, in Vanessa's garden, and waiting for her now. The young lady's mother looks a little puzzled, and the Emperor is now asking if she couldn't visit him at least once. The main character then realizes that he is the Emperor of those who fell in love with her mother, and the woman now answers His Majesty that everything is not so, and if she had met him in Vanessa's garden, she would never have seen Guile again. Therefore, she does not regret her decision, but she is very remorseful for the pain caused. And for many years of waiting, the Emperor then only sadly looks away, and the main character, looking at his shaking hands, can say that the Emperor really loved her. The man then looks at the main character and asks if this girl is her daughter with Sir Houston, Mirabelle. Then he bows and says that His Majesty greets him, but the man then claims that he does not think that this conversation is for children, so he offers to talk in private, to which the woman agrees, after which she turns to the little girl and asks if she could play outside for now, because she will soon return to her. "Hey," the girl agrees, and then claims that she will wait outside, after which the young lady leaves the room and thinks that the Emperor seems to value her, and it doesn't seem like he will do anything bad to her. However, then the young lady hears someone scream as she looks ahead. Then he sees that it is a boy with black hair who is now screaming that the girl appeared out of nowhere. The main character realizes that this hair and its color remind him of someone, and the maid at this time asks if His Highness is okay. Prince Adrien Castro. a boy when he asks a young lady who she is, and the girl should be glad that he was not hurt. But now all his clothes are dirty. The main character thinks he's cute, but what a spoiled character he has. After which it greets His Highness and claims that her name is Mirabelle, and the girl herself thinks that he actually bears a striking resemblance to the Emperor. The maid at this time turns to His Highness and says that the girl is the granddaughter of the Grand Duke Crichton, and the boy then asks if the Crichton house really has another child besides Elliot. The main character then begins to leave and asks for forgiveness for the fact that she collided with His Highness, but says that it is a relief that he was not hurt, so with his permission she will go. But the boy tells her to wait, and then asks who is there with the Emperor now, and the young lady then asks His Highness what is wrong. But the boy then claims that the man who made the Empress cry is now in the waiting room, and for her sake he will teach this man a lesson. The main character then thinks that she understands how this child feels. After all, the Emperor and his old love are outside the doors of this reception room, and it seemed that he had not yet fully recovered, so of course for the Empress this was a complete nightmare. And the boy ran there as soon as he saw tears in his mother's eyes, and she is very familiar with his feelings, because the boy is an attentive child and a good son, but still too daring. The girl then says that this is her mother, and she is now talking with the Emperor, and the boy asks what she is talking about. The young lady then asks him to be calm, because her mother had no intention of upsetting Her Majesty the Empress. Well, then someone turns to Adrien and the boy is a bit, and the main character turning around also widens her eyes in surprise because she understands that this is most likely the Empress. The woman then turns to her son and says that he will only complicate the Emperor's life and put him in an uncomfortable position, and Malta says that he came there because this man upset his mother, and this is unforgivable. The Empress then addresses recoil and states that she appreciates his feeling, but there is no need for it. After all, in fact, something else upsets her. However, then the woman pays attention to the baby, and he asks who she is, and the girl bows and says that her name is Mirabelle. She is also the daughter of Cornelia Creighton and Gail Houston. The Empress then says that it's clear, after which she asks if the baby is waiting until the conversation ends and if she wants to go with her, because it will be a little easier to wait for tea. The main character thinks that she is probably like an eyesore for the Empress, but still she takes her hand and thanks her. A little time later, they are already at the table with goodies, and the woman says that the baby has the appetite of her mother, because Cornelia also loved to eat a lot of sweets. Now she says that the baby should enjoy it. The main character then thanks Her Majesty, but then she notices the boy's slightly puzzled look and thinks that this guy is just like Elliot, but a little different, and continues to stare at her. The Empress then turns to the baby and says that she doesn't know if she heard from her mother, but she and Cornelia were good friends. Although she cannot say for sure whether the woman still considers her a friend, the main character then thinks that she is sure that her mother considers her her friend, and if she sees her, she will not be angry. However, then the main character hears her mother calling her. However, the Empress then asks Cornelius if this is it. The woman then greets Her Majesty and states that they have not seen each other for a long time, after which she asks how she is doing, but the Empress does not look very happy, and she just screams that because of her, 8 years of her life were a living hell. James was waiting for her all the time. The young lady's mother then looks away, a little puzzled, and the Empress claims that he was all she had. And in addition, Cornelia simply disappeared and sent me not a single word about whether she was alive or not. Therefore, now the woman asks if she has any idea how she was offended and upset. The boy watches all this, already clenching his fist, and decides to act. However, the main character grabs his hand when the young man turns around. Then the young lady only shows him to be quiet. After all, she understands that in the eyes of these women, she sees that all this anger and sadness are covered by slightly different feelings. The Empress then claims that now, when she sees that Cornelia, if she's alive and well, she can't help but feel happy, and it's amazing. The main character understands that these are signs that she was really bored and worried. And now, while the kids are watching these two, the Empress says that she is so glad that Cornelia has returned. The main character then thinks what a relief this is for the two of them and rejoices at it. A short time later, they are all sitting together at the table, and the Empress tells her friend to look at her hands because they are so rough. Cornelia then say that when Guile died, he had to take on all the manual labor. Well, the Empress asks how the Grand Duke did because he adored her, and didn't he really help at all? The woman then claims that she wrote to him several times, But for some reason none of the letters arrived, and after she refused him, she could not just take it and return home. You know, she thought that her father still condemned her for this. But the Empress then asks how she is and why the girl didn't write to her because they are friends. And the main character says that it would be arrogant on her part, but the Empress then only claims that she needed to think more about her. The main character now understands that after listening to their conversations, she understood why her mother and the Empress were such good friends. After all, Empress Mariana secretly loved the Emperor for a long time, and on the day when she decided to abandon him, the young lady's mother ran away with her father, leaving the Emperor and annulling their engagement. Fortunately, Mariana managed to take her place and contact the Emperor whom she loved. But Emperor Castro continued to wait for his mother. Because of this, they got married only 2 years after the engagement. The love of women at Castro's temperature, her concern for the mother of the little league and the dinner she experienced, turned into a mixture of terrible misfortunes. Until Prince Adrien was born. The main character thinks that at least Prince Adrien is a good son. However, the girl still notices the boy's gaze on her and wonders when he will stop staring. The boy then asks if something is wrong and if she doesn't like cookies, and then pulls the plate towards her. The young lady replies that she likes it, but these are too sweet for her, and the boy is then a little surprised. He eats cookies and asks who doesn't like sweets, and the main character claims that, as she said, she's just not against sweets. However, then the young lady does not finish her speech and says that it is not important. When the time comes to say goodbye, the Empress tells her friend to come to the royal castle. When she finishes, she will prepare her favorite tea. The young lady's mother says that she will definitely, but don't let the Empress be offended by her for coming too often. The woman only laughs in response to this, and then they say goodbye. The Empress says that she hopes to see Mirabelle again soon, and the main character thanks Her Majesty and claims that it was a pleasure to meet her. Well, then she looks at the boy and sees that he hesitated a little. At this time, the young lady's mother turns to Mirabelle and says that it's time for them to go to the carriage, to which the girl agrees and leaves with her mother. And the boy remains there as if a little upset that he still didn't say goodbye to her. The main character is riding in a carriage at this time and thinks that her mother's health is improving. And the meeting with the Emperor went better than expected, so now she needs to collect evidence on Daniel and find out about all his dealings. At this time, the young lady's mother turns to her and asks what the living baby is thinking about. And Mirabelle then tells her mother that she wants to ask her about something, after which the little girl asks if there is anyone else in the family of the Grand Duke Crito whom she has not met. The woman then replies that there is, and this is her cousin, and also her father's younger brother named Daniel Crito. And the little girl understands that, judging by her facial expression, Mom doesn't suspect Daniel of intercepting the letters. Hey, the little girl is now thinking about how she can prove this to everyone. At this time, the young lady's mother once again turns to Mirabelle and asks if she can ask her for a favor, after which the little girl asks what kind, and Cornelia. Then she asks if her daughter can call Duke Crito grandfather, to which the little girl is a little embarrassed. The woman says that in the end, he is her grandfather, and the man walks around and doesn't show it, but she is sure that he really wants the girl to call him that. The main character thinks that this is a little awkward, but her mother is right because the man is her mother's father and her grandfather. But she still thinks that she is doing this for her mother, after which she says okay and she will try. To which the woman smiles and thanks her daughter, after which she states that she hopes she will quickly get used to it. A short time later, they enter the Duke's mansion, and the man meets them and then asks if they met with the Emperor. The woman replies that yes, and everything went well. And the man then asks how His Majesty is doing and what they talked about. The woman then says that they talked about what happened in the past and how they felt then, and also His Majesty reacted to this with understanding, so the father has nothing to worry about. The Duke then sighs and says that thank God, but finally he can relax. Cornelia. Then she claims that last year Uncle Daniel promised to return and she is sure that until then they will be able to rest a little. In Hertz, then he says that, yes, let the daughter go upstairs and rest a little. The main character then turns to her mother and is about to address the man as the Grand Duke, but then falls silent. And she claims that she wants to tell Grandpa something, so let Mom go upstairs without her. The man then smiles and says that he will soon send Mirabelle to Cornelius and let the child rest a little because he is interested in finding out what's the matter. The woman then says, okay, then she will wait upstairs. Hey, baby agrees. A little later, the maid is already putting tea on the table, and the Duke tells the little girl to drink tea. And the main character then thinks that this is the reception room, where she plunged into eternal sleep in a past life, and the Duke now asks what the girl wanted to tell him. The young lady then turns to her grandfather and asks if he remembers what she said about the letters her mother wrote. The man then replies that yes, and she said that it says an apology. The little one claims that her mother sent at least 2 letters a week, and she sent some of them through the Merchant Guild and some through mercenaries. There must have been at least 20 pieces a year, and the fact that none of them reached my grandfather is a little strange. The baby understands that now he is unlikely to believe even if she says that his brother intercepted these letters. And all she needs now is to arouse suspicion, so now the little girl claims that she is a little afraid that these letters could be lost because of Togo, that someone really dislikes her and her mother. The main character understands that now she is experiencing not fear, but disgust. After all, it was because of Daniel Credo that her mother fell into eternal sleep from a completely curable disease, and the baby had to bury her in the ground with her own hands. Therefore, the little girl understands that this was the most painful thing, and she will have to keep her beloved mother buried under the cold, dark mud. Well, the girl understands that this will not happen again. Now the Duke says that it is indeed strange that so many letters were lost, but there is nothing to worry about because no one in this mansion wishes harm to either her or her mother. The baby then understands that there is no point in telling her stories from the future. Then the girl claims that this situation needs to be sorted out, and she would like to ask him about it as a granddaughter, after which the young lady rises from her seat and thanks her grandfather for listening. The man always says you're welcome, and then tells his darling to go and rest a little. As the young lady heads towards her room, she thinks that she shouldn't rush because only a day has passed since they arrived at the mansion. And if you think about it, does Brian really not suspect yes, EA, like the Grand Duke? But it's hard to imagine Brian as Daniel's accomplice. After all, he is the legal heir of the House of Credo and has the right to all the inheritance, title, and wealth, so there is no point in him taking Daniel's side because he will not receive anything, but will only lose. Additionally, Brian seems to be on good terms with the Duke, and it is more logical to assume that Daniel acted in secret so no one could notice his actions, not even Brian. The baby thinks that this is not so difficult because he spends most of the year on the front line, and so far this is just a guess, but then the girl suddenly notices how the servants are whispering to each other, and when the main character listens a little, she hears Lord Credo being welcomed back. The man then takes off his hat and the main character. She looks at him with disgust and realizes that this is the same uncle. At this time, one of the servants helps the Lord undress, and then he looks at the baby who is on the stairs, and he claims that he does not recognize that girl, after which the butler claims that she is the daughter of Lady Cornelia. The man then says that he heard that Cornelia had returned, however, he did not know that she had a daughter. But the main character thinks what a liar he is, because he knew this all along from the letters. This man's every breath is filled with lies, and now the Lord turns to the baby and says that he is glad to meet her, and is also her cousin. After which he invites the little girl to come up to him and let her take a better look at herself. The main character is then a little silent and does not want to come closer to him, and the Lord then says that the baby is so shy. Well, he thinks that over time she will get used to him, and the servant claims that this is natural after all. Only a day has passed since the little lady arrived at the mansion. The man then turns to the baby and asks if she will at least tell him her name. After all, he is her grandfather's younger brother, and his name is Daniel Credo, and it's also nice to meet him. The baby just thinks that he smiles like any kind-hearted old man, and she would have done this if she had not experienced his cruelty in the past, because a man disarms people with his charm, and probably that is why Duke Credo never suspected him. The girl thinks that she should just play the child, after which she asks if this is Grandpa's younger brother. The man then replies that she shouldn't be afraid either, and the butler then supports him and says that this is so, after all, Lord Daniel Creighton is her cousin, after which the main character claims that her name is Mirabelle, and the man then extends his hand and tells Madame Mirabelle that he is glad to meet her. However, the main character, seeing how he extends his hand, is very scared, after which she immediately steps back. But then she realizes that she made a mistake and thinks that only the thought of him touching her made her instinctively retreat. The man then looks at her a little surprised and remains silent, But then he just smiles and claims that he thinks there is no need to rush into getting to know each other, because now they will see each other much more often. He also claims that he still needs to see the baby's grandfather, so he asks if she knows where he is now. The young lady replies that yes, she also asks the Lord if she could be kind and take him to him because this is very important for him. The servant then turns to their mistress Mirabelle and states that Lord Daniel seems to want to get to know her better, and the man replies that of course, and he hopes the little one doesn't mind. And the main character at this time just clasps her hands behind her back and doesn't know what he's up to. Many of them really don't want to do anything for him. However, she also cannot refuse and not cause tension. So the little girl says okay and she will see him out, then turns around and tells the Lord to follow her. While they are heading down the corridor, the Lord claims that the baby is different from Cornelius. After all, as a child she was always sociable, after which he asks if the girl is still getting used to the new environment. The servant claims that she needs time to feel at home, and he is sure of it. Lord D then says that this is wonderful, and the girl must have been lost because all her life she lived as a peasant, and now she finds herself in a mansion, and it will take at least several months for her to get rid of peasant sensitivity. However, the Lord also claims that she has a pleasant face, and with proper care she will have many admirers. And it's good that her appearance won't hurt when looking for a husband. The main character then just sighs, and she thinks that it is difficult for her to listen to these outrageous and humiliating things, but she must remain calm because she needs to find the traitor who intercepted the letters on Daniel's orders and win the trust of the Grand Duke, Kristen, and Brian. After all, only then will she hide Daniel's plans and take revenge, and also make him pay for everything he has done. So the little girl understands that time is not enough, and there is no need to rush. For now, she needs to look for subtle hints or clues in his words. The man is now asking whether the son of Marquis Baef is now about 16 years old, and after all, a marriage alliance with their house would strengthen the position of the House of Credo among the middle nobility. The man also laughs and claims that Grace's house would welcome Mirabelle with open arms just for her beauty, but that's why they want so many bad rumors, so she's not the best candidate for matchmaking. The man also claims that Count Khaled's house is also not bad, and the main character at this time thinks how long she can talk about this because she cannot get rid of the feeling of disgust. The girl understands that considering potential suitors for a 9-year-old girl based on status and wealth is disgusting, but she needs to restrain herself to win her grandfather's trust. The man claims that Duke George would be ideal, if not for his age. However, then someone asks the cousin what this means. It turns out to be Elliot, and he claims that Mirabelle is only 9 years old, and as far as he remembers, Duke George has no children. Therefore, he asks if the man really considers Duke George as a potential suitor for Mirabelle. After all, if he cannot remember his age, then the boy claims that he will have to give his uncle medicine for memory loss. The man then remains silent for a while, after which he turns to Elliot and claims that he meant that the Duke could help in finding a suitable partner for Mirabelle, and it hurts him to hear that the boy distorted his words in such a way. But the young man then only asks if he will then mind if he passes this on to his father and the Grand Duke. The main character wonders if Elliot is really standing up for her, and the man claims that the boy can do as he pleases. The young man then claims that he will do so, and also asks why Mirabelle acts as a guide to his cousin. The girl then claims that he asked her to take him to his grandfather, but she herself understands that she can no longer listen to this man's dirty lies. The boy at this time claims that the only one who needs to be accompanied is Mirabelle, and the Lord only remains silent in response to this. The boy then turns to Mirabelle and claims that he was informed that her room is ready, so he will take her there because he is sure that Barden is quite capable of handling this himself. So he asks them to excuse him, and the main character, when she turns around, seeing the man's face, they understand that this is not the look of a loving uncle, and the languid gaze of snakes that have missed their prey. A short time later, the boy is already showing Mirabelle her new room. Then he asks how the girl is and if she likes it, and the baby, sitting down on the bed, says that it is very soft and claims that she really likes the room. The young lady understands that it is difficult to accept this as a new reality, but she likes to have a beautiful and cozy bed. She also likes that there is someone here who will stand up for her. And, although it's a little embarrassing, it's very cute. The boy at this time turns to the young lady and says that this is only his opinion. However, he tells Mirabelle to try to stay away from her great uncle. after which he sits on the bed next to her and claims that at least let the girl try to avoid dialogue in private, because the servants will not be able to help her. So when the little girl sees him, let her make sure that there is someone else next to her. Well, in general, let her not pay attention to this for now, because the baby was probably scared, so he's sorry. The main character then claims that everything is fine, but it was still quite uncomfortable, so she is glad that Elliot stood up for her. The girl then looks at the young man and wonders if he too became a victim of Daniel, but he is the legitimate grandson of the Grand Duke and the only son of Brian, so she can hardly imagine that they would treat Elliot poorly. The baby then realizes that she is now a child, so she can ask, after which she turns to Elliot and asks if Uncle Daniel was bullying him. The boy claims that he and she are in the same boat, and the little girl then asks if he is talking about marriage. And the guy claims that Uncle Daniel is obsessed with this issue, and the little girl then compliments her brother and says that it's like he's trying to get rid of them. After such words, the boy is a little surprised and asks if Mirabel is really 9 years old, but the little girl just smiles. However, then she thinks that children are also offended by this, and she is an adult in a child's body, so everything is clear to her. Well, to be honest, if she were an ordinary child, she would not have understood half of what Daniel said. She also looks at the boy, who is now muttering under his breath that he just thinks that they should consider feelings, and thinking that he seems more mature to those children his age, and sometimes he is even sharper than adults. However, the young lady then realizes something and turns to Elliot. And then he asks if there is a girl he likes. The guy then blushes a little, but then honestly answers that yes. And the main character then claims that she knew it and asks if she can ask who it is. The young man then becomes a little puzzled. However, she claims that her name is Zenial Saffron. Well, then he gets up from his seat and claims that it's time for him to go anyway. And slamming the doors, he screams for Mirabel to take care of herself. The girl then thinks how sweet it is of him, and then lie down on the bed and think about the name that the boy voiced. The girl understands that she once heard that the Lord of the House Creighton and the House Saffron got married, and now she congratulates Elliot. The girl understands that as soon as she set foot on the threshold of the Creighton estate, she did not leave the feeling of awkwardness, but thanks to Elliot, she felt much better. And the girl thinks that now that she has rested, it's time to think, and the baby understands that someone. In addition to Daniel, he intercepted my mother's letters because he did it without even consulting the Grand Duke, which means the person who gave the order was quite influential. All these details immediately point to one person, and this is Steward Barden, who was expecting Daniel today. Judging by the way they talked to each other, it seemed that these two knew each other well. However, this is not enough to make him the main suspect, and if he is hosting guests, then it is not strange that he is working on Daniel. The young lady realizes that it is still possible that he is not the only one in cahoots with Daniel, so she must get acquainted with the staff of the mansion. The girl understands that, to some extent, one can understand why Daniel did what he did. And after all, Mom broke off the engagement with the Emperor, creating a giant schism between the House of Creighton and the royal family. So even if Daniel becomes the Lord of the House of Creighton, the royal family will not interfere. But the young lady then thinks what will happen if the relationship between Credo and the Emperor improves, thanks to the return of her mother. Because it is impossible to predict for sure. The House of Crichton is plunging into terrible danger for Daniel Crichton, and the Emperor and the royal family come to the rescue, and this would be the worst-case scenario for him. Therefore, the little girl understands that if it was because of this that he intercepted his mother's letters, then he was probably not mistaken. But now the girl understands that her mother returned home safely and has already talked with the Emperor, so she hopes the thought of it haunts him at night. Well, the girl also understands that Daniel is not one to sit idly by, and he might try to get rid of the two of them under the guise of goodwill, so it's disgusting. The baby understands that she would have hit this bastard if Elliot had not intervened. However, then someone turns to them from the skin and says that the food is ready, after which he asks if she can come in, and the little girl tells you to come in. One of the maids then enters the room and is greeted by Madame Mirabel. She claims that her name is Kalina Clovet. Well, the girl can simply call her Kalina, and the main thing is that the heroine says that she is pleased to meet Miss Kalina. The maid then claims that Mrs. Mirabel can simply call her Kalina, and the main character then says that's good and thanks her. After which the woman points to another maid and says that this is Anita Leopel, who will personally take care of her. The maid then says that it is a great honor for her to serve Madame Mirabelle. The blonde then claims that she will also be with the mistress, but Anita will be a personal servant and will accompany the young lady wherever she goes and keep company. The main character then says that she is also glad to meet you. A little time later, when the main character is heading down the corridor, then someone turns to her and it turns out to be her uncle. The man asks if the girl is heading to the dining room. The young lady, looking at him, calls him uncle. The man then leans over, opens the baby, and says that she's done well for escorting Cornelia to the royal castle, after which he asks if anything happened. But the little girl asks what, for example, after which the man, a little puzzled, says that it's nothing and let her forget about what he asked. After which he clears his throat and states that what is more important is whether he can escort her to the dining room. The main character thinks that this is surprising because a person who has destroyed many demons can hardly talk to a little girl like her. The man then says that it's not necessary if she doesn't want to, and the main character grabs his hand and says that not at all, and she and her uncle should go. Well, as they head out, the young lady looks at her uncle's face and sees that he's almost crying, after which the little girl asks in surprise if something happened and if he is crying. And the man apologizes and says that he is just very happy that he has such a charming and sweet niece. At this time, the maid hands the young lady a handkerchief, and the main character realizes that her idea of Brian has been turned upside down. The girl also realizes that after so many years of fighting alone, she has a reliable family, and everything seems more beautiful than she could ever imagine. The man at this time asks if the little girl met anyone in the royal castle and if anything happened. He also asks if she would be so kind as to share the details with her uncle. The young lady claims that she met His Majesty the Emperor, but he wanted to talk to her mother alone, so she had to leave. She also met the prince and empress, and the woman said that she and her mother were good friends, so the little girl asks if this is true, and the man replies that, yes, they have been friends since childhood. The woman was more shocked than the rest when she learned about the disappearance of Cornelia with guile, after which the main character realizes that her mother was a very dear empress, and the man at this time claims that she suffered a lot because of them. Again, he still deeply sympathizes with her. Well, then the uncle asks the little girl if the prince was sadder and offended her. The main character remembers this boy and understands that he himself plopped down on the floor, blamed her, and then sulked. Well, now she says with a smile on her face that it's nothing, and her uncle says what a relief it is. The baby understands that while she waits to see this, in the end, he is a good son. And the man at this time says that okay then, but if he shows disrespect to Mirabelle, then let her let him know. After all, it just so happens that he is the boy's fencing coach and will make him pay if he ever offends the little girl. The main character then thinks what kind of torment will await the boy during training, and after this, the young man will definitely not rush to offend her again. Well, the man then claims that it doesn't have to be the prince, after all. She should just let her know if she ever needs his help. Well, the main character then realizes that she needs help, after which she turns to her uncle and asks if he could teach her how to use a sword. The girl understands that her mercenary skills were simply instinctive methods of survival that became a habit, and if she learns from such an artificial trowel as Brian, she will be able to reach heights, and maybe even be able to destroy all of Daniel's people. The uncle then claims that it will be much more difficult than the little girl thinks, so he asks if she's sure she just wants to do it. The man, when he leans towards Mirabelle, does not claim that he and her uncles will not feel sorry for her during training, and the little girl confidently claims that everything is fine, and she wants to study, after which the man with a smile on his face says that then he accepts her request and they will start tomorrow at dawn. After which the man also claims that she can tell him at any time if she wants to stop. The main character then agrees and claims that she will not do this, and her uncle will see again. A short time later, they enter the room with the Duke, and the young lady's uncle claims that it looks like they were the last to arrive. The little girl says it looks like it. And at this time, the grandfather calls her to him and tells the baby to sit next to him, and also tells Brian not to stand there either, but to sit down. The main character then comes up and sits down, but thinks, why, this is a place of honor, and by all rights, it should belong to Brian. However, he doesn't seem to mind that she's sitting there. And he also turns to the young lady and says that she is probably tired after her visit to the royal palace. And the little girl replies that she is not at all, and it was wonderful there because she drank a cup of juice with pleasure. The young lady's cousin sighs and is silent for a while, and the Duke only tells the little girl to tell her if anything happens because he will take care of everything. The main character then thinks that just like her uncle, this family seems too distracting, but she thinks that this is worth being grateful for. After which Mirabelle, with a smile on her face, tells her grandfather that she will do so and then thanks him. However, then the man becomes silent a little, and the main character thinks what's wrong and then asks her grandfather about it. However, when she looks at his face, she sees that the man is almost crying and the girl understands that this is still hereditary. Daniel at this time just laughs and tells his brother that he cannot suddenly change his character just because he has a granddaughter and people will be shocked. Upon learning that the Grand Duke Credo, known for his steadfastness, sheds tears, the main character thinks that let him charm them as much as he wants. However, Daniel will not deceive her. The Duke then apologizes for his manners, but claims that he must introduce him, and then the Duke points to the baby and says that it is Cornelia's daughter. There is no hell then claims that in fact, she and Mirabelle have already met. The man then asks what he means and how it could be, and also if they really know each other. No. Then he wants to say something. But the boy interrupts him and claims that when his cousin returned to the mansion, he asked Mirabelle to be his guide, and he asked a child who spent only a day in this place and barely knows how it works. After this, the man just looks at the guy coldly and then just laughs slightly and claims that he is terribly embarrassed. But the girl was so charming when he first saw her that he decided to make her blush and asked to accompany her, and the little girl was very smart and knew the way very well. He also claims that, be that as it may, he will ask his brother to be more careful because Mirabelle only stayed there for a day and let him imagine how scared she would be if she got lost. However, 30 minutes later, the Duke is already smiling and says that his little Mirabelle is smart beyond her years, and that's so cool. The man asks his brother if he can imagine that this little girl got there from Delphi on her own, but Daniel then, with a smile on his face, says that from there it's a good 3 days' drive. But the Duke then excitedly claims that right in front of the mansion, she told him that Cornelia Credo was her mother, and she was very sick, so she asked him to help. While the maid pours him another glass, the man claims that the girl is very brave, and it is obvious that the blood of Crichtons flows in her veins. And Daniel then tells his brother that it seems so. The main character, looking at her grandfather, thinks when he managed to get so drunk, and the man just laughs at the top of his lungs. To burst in like that, but she is not brave at all. Or rather, she was. Determination after all, she simply made an oath to herself that he would never lose his mother again. But now she hears Daniel just sigh and then turn around and look at him. And the man at this time claims that one day the young lady will make an excellent Credo. After all, with such nerves, she should be quite suitable for the role of the head of the Grand Duchy of Credo. The Duke then claims that he likes this idea and economically needs to get to know the baby's character better, but Mirabelle really shows great promise. The young lady then realizes that she has never seen the Duke in such a good mood, but Daniel is only pretending and hiding his true evil nature. And this upsets the young lady a little, however. She thinks that the Duke seems to trust him completely, but this is understandable again. They have lived their whole lives together as a family. Daniel then turns to the man and asks how about throwing a ball in honor of Cornelia and Mirabelle. The Duke then asks if he is talking about the ball, and the man replies that yes, it will be in honor of Cornelia's return to high society. The Duke then states that it is a good idea, but they must get their opinion first. Therefore, from now on, everything will be as his daughter and granddaughter wish. The young lady's mother then turns to her father and claims that she doesn't mind at all. But she's a little worried about Mirabelle because she's such a sensitive girl. The main character then looking at his mother, he thinks that she can understand why she doubts it, as soon as the rumor spreads that they have returned. Many will congratulate them and welcome them, but the young lady understands that there will be fewer of them, and those who will start gossiping behind their backs. And her mother worries that the young lady is hurt by their words, so perhaps it was for this reason that Daniel proposed this ball. After all, he wants to turn her into a little obedient puppet, but the little girl thinks that everything will not be as Daniel thinks. The little witch would never have survived as a mercenary if such trifles frightened her. Therefore, now the main character says that she is fine and she wants to go to the ball, and the woman importantly asks if the baby is confident, because in general, mommy is a little worried. The young lady's great-uncle then says that Cornelia should give her daughter a chance. The whole child seems excited, and it will be a good experience for her. He also claims that he is sure that the capital has already spread the word about their return, and the woman can only imagine what they will say if she does not even appear. The young lady's mother then agrees with her uncle and says that he is right. But the man then only claims that such rumors concern not only her, because they can also affect Mirabelle. And the young lady's mother then says that she thinks a ball would be a good idea for both of them, and the main character's cousin just grins. Ya then says that this is very good, and he will order the servants to prepare a perfect bot for both of them. Well, the little girl is just silent. She understands that she knows that this is a trap, and it is not easy for her to go for it. However, Daniel should not let his guard down either, and the little girl promises that everything will not be the same as last time, because she sees right through him. A little later, the maid turns to the mistress and says that she must be so excited. Well, the girl then doesn't understand what she's talking about and asks why she should be excited. The maid claims that because of the grand ball, there are only 2 weeks left. Well, the main character then claims that he's not coming soon, so as long as she doesn't worry about him. Hey, then the girl claims that her training will start soon. The maid claims that the riding outfit looks good on the mistress. And the main character then thanks her and says that later she will get suitable clothes for training, but this is really comfortable. The maid, then a little upset, says that she was going to help the lady get dressed, and the main character says that she is able to handle it herself but thanks her. But the maid also claims that the Grand Duke himself is overseeing the organization of this grandiose palace, and it must be ideal, unsurpassed, and also unusual. And the maid now also claims that the Duke ordered to feed the poor because this ball should be enjoyed by all people. Oh, the main character, looking at her maid and thinks that she is charming. The main character then claims that it is a pity that all the employees have been busy with preparations since the morning. But the hospital says that the lady should not pay attention to them because, after all, this is their job. The main character then says that at least she shouldn't have to get up early in the morning to help her get ready for her workout. New Year's says that this is stupidity, and to believe that she should be close to the melody all the time, and she was taught that way. Afterwards, they approach the training room and the maid reports this. The main character then understands that she will learn from Brian Creighton himself and will become even better after his training. And again, she is sure of this. And also, as a nice addition after she spends enough time with these two who will be able to tell for sure whether they are allies or enemies, because someone from the mansion intercepted Mom's letters, and if they are allies, then she can get a little help from them. At this time, the boy approaches Mirabelle and greets her, to which the main character says hello to the boy. The young lady's uncle then also wishes the little girl good morning and asks if she feels tired. The main character replies that there is no man there telling her not to overdo it. After all, today is her first day, so they will start with stretching and let the girl watch and also repeat after him and Elliot. The man claims that stretching is the most important part of training because it helps to avoid unnecessary injuries. So let the little one never forget to warm up. And if she stretches after training, who will be even better? The man also claims that every day from now on she should stretch before and after her workout. And when they are almost finished, the uncle of the young lady asks if she really has a pleasant feeling, but that the little girl agrees. There, the man then offers to test her endurance. He also turns to his son and says that he should join her, after which the boy states that they will run 1 lap around the hall, to which the girl agrees. And then they start their race together. The man watches them, and the main character thinks that this is not surprising. And breathing heavily, she realizes that she has lost her form. The boy then asks if Mirabelle is okay, to which the girl replies that she thinks she is okay. The young man says that then let her take her time and they will see each other later. The main character then just smiles and continues running. After this, a little time later, the young lady's uncle is already saying how great she is, and the young lady, breathing heavily, understands that she did it. The man then turns to the baby and asks if everything is okay and if she is dizzy, and the girl claims that she is fine. Elliot then tells Mirabelle that she did a good job. The man claims that the baby was fast for a beginner, but they have a lot of work ahead of them, and they will practice fencing after the girl is resilient enough to handle the situation, and she will work on it. The man then gets up and claims that now he will give her more tasks. And she asks if the girl thinks she can cope with this, to which the main character gets a little scared. But then she confidently answers that, yes, she is ready. After which, her uncle says that she is great and offers to go further and do a few squats, to which the main character understands that he was not joking. And the man doesn't feel sorry for her at all, just as he said that day. A short time later, the main character collapses on the floor from exhaustion, and the maid then runs up to her in shock, after which he holds out a handkerchief and tells the mistress to sit down on it, but the main character just waves her hand and says that she is fine. The maid, when she asks if my lady is sure, well, the main character then notices her uncle's gaze on her, after which she immediately gets up and realizes that she needs to get up while she has the strength. The man claims that they will repeat these exercises every morning to improve her endurance, but he thinks that it will be difficult for the baby. The main character understands that she knows that to learn fencing you need basic endurance and, besides, Uncle Brian spends time and effort training her personally, so she can't let him down. After which the young lady with a smile on her face claims that he was not worried about her because she could handle it. The young lady then bows and thanks her uncle for the lesson, and he extends his hand with a smile on his face. And he pats the girl on the head, saying that she's doing great, and today she behaved well. A little while later at the table, the Duke claims that he heard that the baby was training with Brian, and the man also says that he hopes it wasn't too difficult for her, but the girl claims that it wasn't at all, and it was exciting because she had fun, and she also claims that she wants to continue learning from him. The young lady's uncle then claims that it must have been hard for her, especially since it was only her first day, but the girl did not give up. And then the Duke says that perhaps the House of Creto will soon see another great swordsman in its ranks. Well then, someone asks if there is a need for a girl to learn to wield a sword. It turns out to be the young lady's cousin, who has just approached the table. The man sits down at his place and asks if it seems like that to his brother, but the Duke then only asks where Daniel was. Well, the men are told that he needed to sort out some matters. However, then someone asks what is wrong with a girl studying fencing. This turns out to be the main character, and now she claims that she knows many famous female knights. So judging by what she heard, they all started early. The young lady understands that she should have just let it go, but this man is getting on her nerves. And where he smiles like that now, and also claims that this is exactly how it is, nothing is impossible if you continue to try. However, the great-uncle then says that it is easier said than done. Well, the main character then asks if he has never achieved anything, and the man then frowns and then asks what she said. The young lady then claims that she was told that people who belittle the efforts of others are people who have never achieved anything in their lives, and she apologizes, and also claims that she did not mean that the uncle is such a person. The girl understands that he won't shout at the little girl at the dinner table while the Duke is watching. She herself claims that she knows that the man said this only because he is worried about her, so she thanks her but claims that she wants to continue training. The Duke just thinks how cute his granddaughter is, and at this time his cousin says that that's exactly what the little girl is right, because he's just worried about her safety. However, he then states that at this stage, he believes that Mirabelle needs etiquette lessons more than fencing lessons, and she should learn some good manners before she runs into other nobles, because from what he saw yesterday, she seems to be unfamiliar with dinner manners. The Duke is then silent for a while and then claims that his brother is right. After all, while they are there, the little ones will sooner or later have to learn. But the Duke then turns to the baby and says that it seems he overdid it and he wanted her to be able to relax a little, but he scheduled the ball too early. The main character then, with a smile on her face, tells her grandfather that everything is fine and she likes to do something, and not just sit and relax, to which the man just smiles and says that his granddaughter is so clear. And then he turns to his daughter and asks if she would like to choose suitable teachers for Mirabelle. The woman answers this, and asks her father to give her a list of candidates for these. She will take care of everything else, and she would also like to join Mirabelle in her training, because she has not been among the nobility for so long that she is afraid that she has forgotten everything. The Duke then says that if she wants, then fine, and at this time, the young lady's mother pats her on the head and says that Mirabelle still needs to visit the temple. The woman claims that she will be busy when she starts studying with the teacher, and if she has time, then let her go there today. The baby then replies that she has been meaning to do this for a long time, and she really needs to go today. The little girl also thinks that maybe she really can heal her mother's illness herself. After all, if so, she will do everything possible for this. Herkeg then claims that it's good and he will prepare a carriage for her after the baby finishes eating, and he is sure that no more work will appear for her, so now he wishes bon appétit. Well, then the main character notices how her cousin just looks at her coldly. A short time later, the girl is already setting off in a carriage, and she hears rumors that the Crichtons are going to open their food storage for those in need on the day of the grandiose fall. And this is because the Grand Duke's daughter has returned. The main character remembers what happened at the table today, and her mother asked if Mirabelle was sure that she wanted to study fencing. The girl answered that and asked why her mother was interested, and the woman then claimed that she did not want to dissuade her, but personally she would not want the baby to learn to fight, and the girl then asks why. But their uncle bursts into their conversation and claims that this is all because of guile, after which he asks Cornelia if this is so, and the main character then thinks that everything is clear now. But then she puts her hand on her mom's arm and tells her not to worry. The woman then turns a little worriedly to her daughter, and the little girl only claims that nothing like this will ever happen to them again. And a little later, the young lady's mother was helping her wipe her face with a smile on her face. The main character understands that Gale Houston is a noble knight who sacrificed his life to save the village of Delphi, as well as her father. And her mother was worried that she might end her life just like him. However, the main character understands that in order to protect her mother, she is ready to offer all her strength. But then the little girl suddenly notices something on the street and is surprised. And then he hits the window of the carriage and tells them to wait a minute and see if it's Geoffrey. One of the servants then only tells the lady to be careful and asks her to sit down. The maid then tells the mistress not to lean against the glass, and the main character then claims that the boy has left. The maid only says that it is dangerous to get into a moving carriage, and the main character thinks what a shame it is. And even for a second she doubted what she saw, but Geoffrey was definitely there. The girl thinks that when she returns to the mansion, she will need to ask the Grand Duke Crito to find out how the boy is doing now. But the maid then turns to the young lady and asks if she can ask who Geoffrey is. The main character then claims that he is her friend, whom she met on the way to the capital. And Anita then claims that the lady must be heartbroken because they were ready to jump out of the window to see him, but they didn't even have a chance to say hello. The main character then says that she is sorry for making Anita worry, but she wouldn't say she was heartbroken. But I would rather say that an opportunity worth 2 potatoes was missed. A little time later, someone informs the lady that they have arrived at the temple, and the baby gets out of the carriage. The servant helps her with this, and when the baby is already in front of the temple gates, she understands that the moment of truth has come, and today she will find out. Will she have enough divine powers to heal her mother? The priest then greets the lady, and the female protagonist greets him back. The golden-haired man states that they are deeply honored by their visit and asks her to move on, after which he leads them to a large door and claims that it is there, and the main character thinks how huge this room must be. And beautiful. The priest then asks for farewell, but affirms that only Miss Mirabelle can go further, and the main character asks what is inside. But the man then claims that she will know when she comes in, and he, like all the other priests, went through similar things, so there is nothing to be afraid of. The main character then realizes that it sounds like a trap and whether he wants her to go there alone, after which the baby turns to him and wants to refuse. However, when she looks at the priest, she realizes that even his gaze is so holy and pure that it is impossible to resist, after which the little girl agrees, and he puts his hand on the door. The girl thinks how she can open this giant one. However, she doesn't even have time to finish her thought before the door opens on its own, or the baby thinks that it's no longer important. After which the girl walks further through the room, in the middle of which there is a blue crystal. But suddenly, the main character hears some sound behind her, and when she turns around, she sees that the door has closed right behind her and wonders if she really needs to go further. But the little girl then thinks, what if he was one of Daniel's people and was just pretending to be a priest? Because then everything falls into place. Hey, the girl thinks she needs to leave before things get worse. But suddenly someone turns to the young miss from behind and tells her not to worry. The main character then turns to the man and asks who he is, and he claims that he is humble with the bow of the goddess Dwana, named Pleon, after which the man asks the young lady to sit down and claims that he has something to tell him. The main character, looking at how his staff flutters in the air, thinks that she knows this name, after which the girl asks if he is a saint from the temple of Dwana. The man then looks at her with a smile on his face, and then he just laughs lightly, and the main character thinks that he just grinned. But that's the feeling, that his voice echoes in her mind. But the girl thinks that she shouldn't be nervous because it's not yet clear what he needs. The man then claims that he suspected that the little girl knew who he was, and now it is obvious that they were looking for her. And the main character claims that it sounds as if they specifically lured her there without even having a reason for it. Well, the man then claims that she doesn't know who he is. And the main character then asks for forgiveness without understanding what he means. And the man only claims that more precisely she knows Pleon, who was the saint of the Temple of Dwana. And the main character then realizes in shock that he appeared only when she was 20 years old, and people in this timeline had never heard of Saint Pleon. The man invites Miss Mirabelle to sit down first, and he is sure that she has a lot of questions, so he offers to talk because he will be happy to answer any of them. A little while later, he asks if the girl knows what awaits her in the future because, after all, that's where she came from. After which the man asks if he is right. The young lady then replies that yes, but she doesn't know everything that will happen to her in the future, and he then smiles and also claims that he has been waiting for her arrival for so long. The girl is then silent for a while and then turns to His Holiness, and she says that she still doesn't understand because she has too little information. The girl claims that she knows how to spend the night in the forest, how to ride a merchant guild's cart without paying. But she asks what is the use of this knowledge, after all, if it should play an important role in some large-scale plan using this information of the future. Wouldn't it be better if this place was taken by someone really worthwhile, and not by a former mercenary? The man then turns to Miss Mirabelle and claims that the creature that brought her back to the past chose her, after which he hands the young lady a pendant with a snake. And the main character, taking his hands, thinks about what it is. The man claims that this is a noble creature. It brought Miss Mirabelle there, and the girl then goes into shock. She asks how this pendant brought her back to the past, and the man just smiles and says that she will soon find out everything herself if she keeps it with her. The young lady understands that this man constantly calls the pendant a creature or an entity, and it sounds a little strange, but the girl wonders if this trinket really brought her back to the past. The main character claims that she needs more explanation for this pendant. However, when the main character turns around, she suddenly interrupts her speech and is surprised. After all, there is no one else near her, and the main character understands that all that remains of St. Pleon is a pile of ash-like dust, after which the girl never saw him again. Even when I asked the priest where he had gone, he did not smile, as if he already knew what happened behind those bears. And that's how this fabulous day ended. All the following days were filled with lessons and training, from which Lady Mirabelle was seriously tired. First up was early morning endurance training with Brian, then breakfast and tea, and after that noble etiquette and general education. After these lessons, politeness lessons and dancing, well, the girls liked this kind of physical activity more than boring lessons. The young lady now realizes that it turns out that her mentor, Viscountess Maynard, also taught her mother as a child. And she's already over 60, but her every gesture remains polished, graceful, and impeccable. The woman now claims that nothing can be done, and Lady Mirabelle needs to remember all the materials that she provided to her, so let the girl repeat them over and over again until she memorizes them. Oh, the main character doesn't understand that she compiled a dense curriculum so that even a person as far from social etiquette as she could master it in a lesson. The woman now claims that she would like to teach the girl perfectly, but since there is only a day left before the grand ball, their goal is to teach the girl to maintain a simple conversation. The main character understands that this woman is mercilessly crushing her, but nothing can be done. The principles of noble general knowledge of etiquette and everything else are especially difficult for her. The woman also claims that you should always answer quickly and clearly, and the main character agrees. And the teacher then says that the day after tomorrow, they will be able to take a more reasonable pace and work through the material better. And for today, it's all about general education, and the main character then thanks Madam. And when the girl leaves this room, she thinks that she is finally free from the clutches of Madame Maynard's general education. But the girl thinks that this needs to end as soon as possible so that she can then see what Daniel is doing now. However then, looking out the window, the young lady realizes that, as Madame Maynard said, there is no need to rush. After all, in a past life, Daniel made his move after 14 years, and it will take some time before the worst possible outcome happens. Therefore now, while the main character is walking along the corridor, she understands that the Grand Duke Credo himself will intervene if anything happens to her mother. And the main character then thinks, what else? The priest said that the pendant now belongs to her. But the little girl still did not dare to wear it, because everything about it in that day was unusual. Well, the girl understands that she can't put it off any longer, and needs to see it through to the end. Therefore, sitting in her room with the pendant in her hands, the little girl realizes that she should not be surprised, but it is still an ordinary silver pendant with wings. And the girl wonders if there is anything unusual about him. However, when he looks at the pendant, he wonders if the snake's eyes were open. But then, right in front of the young lady, the brave woman opens her eyes, and she is surprised. The young lady then wonders in shock if the snake is blinking, and she looks at the main character as if she were something unusual there. But the main character still thinks that this is simply impossible, because it is, after all, a pendant. Well then, the girl hears someone's voice who claims that she has finally become a young lady who has heard her call. And the young lady then turns around and then wonders whether she imagined it, or whether she really heard the voice of a little girl. However, young ladies still understand that there is nothing else in the bedroom. Well then, only the pendant remains, and looking at it, the young lady asks if he was talking to her, to which the answer follows, and the young lady is already looking in shock at how he glows and also addresses her as a human child and claims that everything is exactly like that. After all, he is the dragon guard of the goddess Duana named Vivra. The main character then repeats this name, and the snake nods, and the young lady understands that she has already heard this name because this is the guardian in the form of a snake, serving as the hands and feet of the goddess Duana. It has a long white body with huge translucent wings and ruby eyes. But this snake, she's simply adorable, and the young lady can't help but smile when she sees her. Sorry, then I'm a little surprised and asks if the human child listens to her at all. The main character then turns to the snake and asks if it is the guardian dragon of the goddess Duana. The mark then states that she may look different now, but there's a good reason for that. After all, after the battle with the black dragon, she was locked inside the pendant, and this is the only form in which she can manifest herself with her current powers, so the girl must believe her. The main character then asks what kind of battle with the black dragon was this. But then she thinks that the snake may be telling the truth, because Saint Pleon, who was waiting for her in the temple of Duana. All this time, this pendant was called by living beings or mystical creatures living inside this trinket as a sacred dragon. Therefore, the main character now thinks that the fact that she returned to the past is sufficient proof of the existence of incredible phenomena, and frankly, it doesn't matter if this creature is not Vivra. After all, if this artifact really doesn't need her, then at least it won't cause her any harm. Therefore, the main character now turns to the snake and says that she believes it for now. Well, then she asks why Saint Pleon gave it to her because he said that Vivra could answer all her questions. The snake then claims that, yes, she has answers to all her pressing questions, and even about the reason why she returned to the past after she plunged into eternal sleep in a past life. And now the snake claims that the reason the girl was able to go back in time is because there are still traces of the black dragon Calypso there. Well, the main game then claims that she had never met him before, and the snake replies that of course she again plunged into eternal sleep before Calypso returned. However, she was plunged into eternal sleep by a person who was under his influence, and this trace of the black dragon remained in her. The main character then realizes in shock that the person who took her life was Daniel Credo. But the girl then understands that this is not yet certain, and the only thing she was personally convinced of was Daniel's plan to seize the Grand Duchy of Crichton. Therefore, the girl thinks that it is impossible to simply say that Daniel sold his soul to the Black Dragon in order to gain control over the Grand Duchy, because this is absurd. And besides, the main character now says that even if someone under the control of a black dragon twisted her eternal sleep, the order and does not explain how she ended up in the past, otherwise everyone who plunged into eternal sleep would also return to the past. The snake, in response to this, only wags its head and claims that it was not Calypso's powers that revived it, and the main character asks what then. But the snake then claims that it was her, and she returned the girl to the past. The main character is then a little surprised and asks if she really did it, and Vivra answer that, and to be more precise, she and Pleon. After which she also asks the young lady if she knows that Pleon was a saint, and also that Calypso controls Daniel. The main character then only nods and understands that Pleon was also called upon to help prevent the resurrection of Calypso, and the snake gave him power, after which he used it to search for those who are under the influence of the Black Dragon. However, Vivra claims that their strength was not enough to defeat Daniel, and in the end they were unable to prevent the revival of Calypso. Cleon decided that this task would suit someone else and found it. In the end, he sealed the snake in this pendant, and he returned to the past to find Mirabelle. Vivra now claims that Cleon waited for the girl in the temple for many years. And finally she met him, and when the man handed her the pendant in which the snake was sealed, his part of the work was over. The main character then remembers that ashes and understands that this is all that remains of Cleon after he plunged into eternal sleep. But then the main character is a little surprised and asks if it's Vivre. Sent her back to the past because of the black dragon. The snake responds to this and claims that he and Cleon chose her because they were sure that the girl would be able to continue his legacy. But the main character then waves her head and apologizes, but claims that she cannot put the black dragon into eternal sleep, so she should have chosen someone stronger and more experienced in this matter. However, the snake then says what a relief it is that she is not asking her to finish off the white dragon, and the main character thinks, which she then realizes that this is good because someone like Elliot or Jeffrey is much better able to cope with this task. But the snake then only claims that dragons cannot be killed, and the girl just needs to replace him in a trap and then put him to sleep. She also claims that she needs the young lady to prevent the destruction of Calypso's shackles, and the main character then looks at her in surprise. But then she claims that, in other words, in any case, she herself will have to fight him, and no matter how you look at it, this request is impossible. But the snake then claims that the girls do not need to fight the black dragon, and should simply not allow it to be reborn. But the main character then thinks in shock if all dragons are really like that, after which she says that, okay, maybe it's easier than fighting a dragon, but still the task is very difficult, to which the snake agrees and says that the girl is right. Mirabelle then states that if it was Vivra who sent her back in time, then she must have known that she was a mercenary. And the white creature then asks if the girl is talking about how she took people's lives for money, after which the main character says yes. She also claims that back then she had an unbreakable rule, and that was that she would only take a job if she was offered fair pay. And in general, in exchange for helping the black dragons, she also wants something. The snake then claims that if the girl successfully prevents the resurrection of Calypso, then Duena's temple will glorify her as a saint and provide all the benefits associated with that title. And the girl met Cleon, so the snake believes that she understands how great the reward is, and besides. But the main character suddenly interrupts the snake and says that's not what she's talking about. Vivra then, a little puzzled, asks what else the girl needs and is it really money. But the young lady then claims that the snake says that Daniel is trying to break Calypso's bonds, and this means that the snake has already found evidence of their connection, to which Vivra answers that, if so, and if so, then she should share information without sparing details. The main character realizes that she knows that this is an almost impossible task, but this could be a great opportunity for her. In 11 years, Daniel will try to usurp the House of Crichton, and she has only 3 years left before she becomes considered an adult, so it will not be easy to stand in the way of the one who is so trusted in the family. However, if she receives information from Vivre, who can prove Daniel's connection with the Black Dragon and convince the others, Treason then claims that she understands what the girl is trying to achieve, however. All she knows is that Daniel is trying to break the seal holding Calypso, and the young lady then asks what she is talking about. The snake then wiltedly states that many people are pursuing the same goal, and Daniel Credo is their central figure, so that's all she knows. Vivre also says that she is sorry and that the girl probably had high hopes for her, but she cannot help her in this matter. But the main character then asks that the snake said that she saw the past and acted as if she had all the information about the world, and now she says that she knows everything except that he is really important, and she claims that no matter what Vivre says, that's all. After all, how can she stop Daniel without knowing anything? After this, the main character just sighs heavily and dares to feel a little puzzled. But then she asks how about she gives her power, and Mirabelle asks what kind of power she is talking about. And the snake replies that it speaks of a power capable of resisting those who are under the control of the Black Dragon. This is divine power. The main character was then in shock, wondering if her family would really give her divine power, and if this creature is really the guardian dragon of the goddess Duena, and if she endows her with divine power, it will greatly help stop Daniel. not to mention the fact that she owes Pleon and Vivra the whole world for bringing her back to the past so she could save her mother. Therefore, the main character now claims that she will ask one last time to make sure. And then he asks his question, asking Vivra if she wants her to destroy Daniel before he can revive the black dragon. And the snake then waves its head and also claims that the girl must stop Daniel Credo. And the main character after that says that this is great, so let the snake leave it to her. Vivra then joyfully asks if she is serious. And Mirabel replies that she is not lying, and she could have returned the snake to Dwana's temple if she had lied. After which the snake thanks her with tears in his eyes and says how good it is. A little time later, the main character turns to Vivre and asks what kind of power she will give her, to which the snake replies that she will give the girl 2 types of power. And Mirabel already knows one of them, because it is a divine power that can only be used by priests blessed by the goddess Dwana herself. And the other one is a little different from the first one. Then suddenly the main character looks at a ball of light that is in the middle of the room. This ball is approaching her hands, and the young lady watches in shock as he turns into a weapon. The snake claims that this is a sword made from one of its bones, and it is called Lespid. Main character then, a little shocked, asks if he's really made of bones, and then asks the question if I'm okay without her again. Maybe she should return her stupidity back. Well, the snake asks if the girl has forgotten that she is a guardian dragon, and for decades, Lepidus was passed on to those who agreed to confront Calypso with her. This is a powerful weapon against the dark forces that Calypso uses to control her subordinates, and she only manifests them when the girl wishes. It also disappears when it is no longer needed, and the main character then asks if she only appears when she wants it. And he thinks that she doesn't want to use it right now, after which the weapon disappears. The snake claims that it is one of a kind, so let the girl use it with caution and yes. In addition, any person under the influence of Calypso will immediately recognize it, so let the girl not use it unless it is absolutely necessary, and the main game does not agree by saying that she will remember. After which the young lady once again summons the sword and says, "What then?" She should practice with him, and the young lady begins. Swing it to the sides as her uncle taught her. The young lady quickly cuts the air with this sacred weapon, and after a few training sessions he sighs. The snake says that the girl has excellent shape, and the main character thinks that she hasn't held a sword in her hands for so long, and thought that she wouldn't remember. But now that she has a sword that she really likes, the girl wants to wave it around a little, after which she withdraws her sword and looks at the snake. She also thinks about the power that can heal her mother, as well as protect her. The young lady realizes that she will cope and defeat Daniel, as well as prevent the resurrection of Calypso, and protect your family once and for all. A short time later, someone tells the young lady that everything is ready. The young lady then thanks Kalina and says that she did a wonderful job as always. The woman claims that it is thanks to the mistress's natural beauty that everything she does for her becomes impressive. After which she offers to go because Mr. Elliot is waiting. And after the main character goes out into the corridor, she sees a boy there who is now asking if Mirabel is ready. The young man also extends his hand and asks to be allowed to accompany her. He claims that at Mirabel's normal age, she would have to be a royal princess to qualify for such a debut, and the only person besides the princess in this kingdom with a high enough status would be the child of the Grand Duke Credo, and, in other words, it would be her. The main character is then surprised and asks if this is true, and the boy claims that this only proves what a huge influence the House of Crichton has in this kingdom. The young lady then realizes that it is not surprising that Daniel sought to lead him, and the girl wonders whether he needs the power of the House of Crichton to resurrect the Black Dragon. And it could be his authority or wealth, so perhaps there is a connection between the resurrection of Calypso and the resources of the House of Crichton. The boy now claims that he wants to say that there is nothing to worry about anymore, because he is sure that the young lady will succeed. But even if she fails, no one will dare to criticize her. Mirabel understands that he is trying to calm her down because he is worried that she is nervous about the grand ball, so now the main characters thank him and claim that this is so comforting. And the boy then stretches out his hand and turns to his sweet lady. Then he asks if she will take his hand, and the main character then, with a smile on her face, tells Mr. Elliot that this is a great honor for her. A short time later, the doors to the ballroom open, and someone reports that Lord Elliot is from the House of Crichton, and Lady Mirabel from the House of Crichton arrived. At this time, the young lady's uncle comes up to them and tells his niece that she looks beautiful, and Elliot is very smart too. The kids then thank Brian, And the Duke then turns to Mirabelle and tells her to go with him and greet the guests, to which the girl agrees, after which they walk together. The Duke, when he approaches them, greets them and claims that his name is Alexander Creto, and he is a lord and also the Grand Duke of the House of Creto. He thanks the people for joining them on this wonderful evening. He also claims that, as they well know, his beloved daughter Cornelia Creto is next to him. This little lady is his granddaughter, who is dear to him more than his own life, and her name is Mirabelle Creto. The guests then clap their hands, and they congratulate his lordship, and also claim that they will probably be so happy to be reunited with them. It must be such a joy. The man, watching his granddaughter smile, puts his hand on her shoulder, and he says that the girl is great. He also thanks people for their kind words and prayers, and thanks them again for joining them on this night of celebrating the return of Cornelia and Mirabelle, after which he tells my lords and my ladies to enjoy this evening. When the main character is already leaving the guests, she sighs and thinks that so many people have come, and she thinks that she felt more comfortable surrounded by evil demons. But suddenly the main character turns around and sees familiar people, after which someone reports that Her Majesty Empress Mariana Castro and His Highness Prince Adrien Castro have arrived. The main character then wonders if Adrien and the Empress herself really came there. After all, the young lady didn't think they would come. The boy turns around, and when he sees the main character, who looks like he has found what he has been looking for a long time, the young man then turns to his mother and points to Mirabelle, and the young lady wonders why he is, after which the two begin to approach Mirabelle. Cornelia then bows and says that it is a great honor for them to accept Her Majesty and His Highness. The main character is also welcomed with them, and the woman then leans over to the baby and says that she is so pleased to see her again, and he also asks how Mirabelle is doing. The young lady notes that everything is fine and thanks her for her concern, but claims that she didn't think that they would actually come to her. I have a fever, it must be terribly busy. So the main character thanks her for finding the time. The blonde claims that she would never have missed the grand ball in honor of Cornelia and her daughter. And then the emperor crawls between the two women, coming closer to the main character. And after that, he just stands and silently looks at her. Mirabelle then wonders why he was staring at her like that. Then he asks His Highness if he wants to tell her something, but the boy only claims that today she looks very cute. And the main character then asks in surprise what he's talking about, and the young man realizes that he said this out loud and blushes, but then claims that this is not what he wanted to say and apologizes, because he scared her last time. The boy then asks to read it again and looks away, and the main character just looks at him and realizes that this doesn't sound like a change, and she understands why he did it even though he himself fell. So now the young lady tells His Highness that everything is fine and thanks him for his apology. But the boy then says what he thought, and he asks if the girl wants to become his friend. Two women look at the baby and then are touched, and Mirabelle thinks why he decided to do this out of the blue. The young lady's mother then turns to her daughter and says that it seems Prince Adrien wants to be friends with her. Mirabelle understands that, in any case, he is an honest child who values his mother very much and is like a charming younger brother. Therefore, now the main character shakes his hand and says that she would like to be friends with His Highness. Well, then the young lady sees that he can't stop staring at her and wonders what's wrong. But the boy then only claims that from that day on he and she will be friends. And the young lady notes that this is true and also thinks how clumsy this fellow is. The young man then only smiles, and the main character thinks that she has never crossed paths with him in the past. Therefore, I didn't even suspect that in principle there was such an attractive side. The boy then turns to Mirabelle and asks if she wants to dance. The young lady asks if he wants to dance, and the boy replies that yes, and everyone told him that he needs to dance on the floor. Mirabelle then thinks that she herself knows, but never thought that she would dance with Prince Adrien. And it's like dancing with your little brother, so there's nothing wrong with it, and it might even be fun. In addition, the young lady understands that she cannot refuse him while the Empress is watching, and she can feel their gaze. Therefore, the main character says that it sounds great and asks if he could ask her officially. The young man then gets a little nervous and says that he will do it right away, after which he approaches Mirabelle and turns to her asking if the beautiful lady could honor him with a dance. The girl understands that this is certainly far from perfect, but then she extends her hand to him and thinks that Adrien did a good job, so she claims that she would consider it an honor, after which the two head to the dancing area. And when the music starts playing, they begin to dance. The main character thinks that Adrien dances beautifully for a man who looks so scared. and this is certainly not a perfect dance, but she herself is not that good. At this time, the guy repeats the tempo of the dance with his tray, but suddenly he says it out loud, and when he sees the young lady's face, he turns away a little in embarrassment, but this causes his leg to twist, and the young man begins to fall to the floor. However, the main character immediately grabs it, and it looks like a perfect ending to the dance. The young man then thanks her, to which the young lady replies that he's welcome, and then claims that he wants to bury himself in a hole. However, Mirabelle claims that he was great, and there's nothing to worry about, and then she speaks to His Highness. That it was a great honor for her, and the guy says it was for him too. But the main character then suddenly turns around because she hears everyone screaming with admiration, and he sees people clapping. The nobles also whisper among themselves and say that these two would make a wonderful couple, and one of the girls asks the other to see how the prince officially courted her, and it's so charming. Another girl claims that they can change the entire relationship between the throne and the Grand Duchy, and they already see a luxurious wedding between them. The main character then thinks about what they are talking about. But Mother and the Empress are also delighted. Therefore, the main character only laughs awkwardly, and she thinks that this is starting to get strange. The girl then also thinks that if only everyone knew what the age difference is between her and this child. Well, then the girl sees that again her mother and the Empress are looking at them with this look. But this is not what she hoped for. At this time, someone approaches them, and it turns out to be Elliot along with the girl. Then he bows and says that it is a great pleasure for him to see His Highness. After which he turns to Mirabelle and says that she only had a few days to practice and she did a great job. The young lady just thanks her cousin. Well, after that she asks who the lady behind him is. The girl then, with a smile on her face, apologizes to His Highness and Miss Mirabelle, after which she introduces herself and claims that she is the daughter of the Earl of Emboro Safena, Zeniel Safin. The Emperor then says that he is glad to meet you and his name is Adrien Castro. Well, the main character is then a little surprised to hear this name. After all, she remembers Elliot saying that the girl he likes is called that. Mirabelle says that she is pleased to meet you, and her name is Mirabelle Credo. The lady with silver hair says that she has heard so much about her from Elliot, and is very glad to finally meet her. Mirabelle thinks that this girl is so beautiful, and it is not surprising that Elliot is in love with her. It seems to her that she is thinning the scent of lilies. Therefore, the girl wonders if Elliot is going to marry her. The young lady then grins and thinks that she wants to tease him even more, after which the main character turns to them and asks if they are going to dance. And after all, she and the prince have already performed the first dance, but these two suddenly become embarrassed, and the young lady just grins, looking at them to believe that these two were so unpacked. Mirabelle then once again turns to her cousin and asks Togo not to say that he doesn't know how to dance, to which the guy is a little surprised and says that he can. After which the guy clenches his fists and becomes a little nervous, turning to Zeniel. But still, he asks if she wouldn't mind dancing with him. The girl then also gets a little embarrassed and says that of course she doesn't mind. The main character then only smiles and thinks that even the powerful and confident Elliot freezes in such situations. The prince then turns to Mirabelle and the main character asks what His Highness wants. The guy asks if he can be her companion for the rest of the evening because he heard that this is her first grand ball, and as her friend, he will teach her the basics. The main character then just inhales and smiles and then tells His Highness that it would be wonderful. The grand ball lasted much longer than she thought, and Mother continued to chat with the Empress until late at night as if it was the most interesting thing in the world. And her companion, Adrien, at that time tried to tell everything he knew about this bar and, pointing to the glass, argued that it was not juice. But the young lady understood that it was wine. The prince told various information about the debutante, and the main character understood that she had already heard all this from Elliot, but did not tell His Highness about it. And in the end, the guy fell asleep, after which the royal guard carried him home on his back. The girl did not want to get tired of communicating with everyone who came. Therefore, she lingered in the surrounding area and quietly slipped away from the ball. And now, being on the street, she can finally breathe. The girl understands that she came out to catch her breath, but she feels as if she was in a fairy tale. The young lady understands that a little walk would not hurt, but suddenly she hears something moving in the bushes. And coming closer, the young lady wonders if this is a robber. After which she immediately turns around and finds a stick, which she immediately picks up. The young lady realizes that she may be attacked before she can call the guards. But then someone crawls out of these bushes and the main character becomes wary. However, it turns out to be just Jeffrey. The guy says that it was difficult, but suddenly he sees someone in front of him. And he doesn't even know the first time that this is his old girlfriend, because the girl with a scary face asks what he's doing there, and the guy then screams. But when Mirabel addresses him by name, the boy understands who it is. And the main character is trying with all her might not to laugh, because she thinks that she is hurting his feelings. After which the girl extends her hand and tells the guy to get up. After which the young man takes her hand and does so. But the young lady then turns to Jeffrey and asks what he is doing there. The boy then asks in what sense she is interested in the ball. He came to see her. People said he could find her there, and the young man thought that he would have to wander for ages before he found her. But now he, with a smile on his face, claims that he was very lucky and that they had not seen each other for a long time. The main character then turns to Jeffrey and then claims that now is not the time to smile. After all, what would have happened if she had been a guard? And the guy could have been severely punished. The young man replies that this really could have complicated everything, and he somehow didn't think, but the main character then asks, what does it mean he didn't think? Mirabel now thinks that she understood this back in the cart, but still he is completely reckless. The guy claims that, to tell the truth, when he heard that the Grand Duke was throwing a grand ball, he decided to go because he hoped to see her there. Therefore he claims that he bought Mirabel flowers. The main character then takes them and says how beautiful they are. Then she asks if he really came all this way just to give them to her, to which the young man smiles and says yes. After all, he had not yet paid her for the potatoes, but he wanted to do it for her. The main character then thanks the guy and says what a beautiful gift this is, after which she takes out one of the flowers and says that she will attach them there so they don't get lost. The guy says they look good, and the young lady then thanks him for the flowers but tells him to be more careful next time. She reaches out her hand and strokes the young man's cheek, and then argues that he needs to defend himself, and asks if Jeffrey understands. Well, boy, when the main character gets a little closer, she gets embarrassed. However, the main character then only claims that he has a leaf stuck in his hair and asks if it's there instead of a decoration, and the young man stutters says yes. Well, the main character then says that he has more scars, and the guy then claims that this is nothing. The young lady then realizes that perhaps she can heal him with the divine power of Vivra. So now the girl tells Jeffrey to wait and let her take a closer look at his wounds. Well, the guy says that it's really nothing special and doesn't need it. After which the girl says that if that's what he wants, then fine, but the young man then says that that's not what he means. And when he begins to worry even more, he still says that she can look, but when the young lady still remains silent, then the guy just grabs her hand and screams for her to look, to which the young lady is only surprised. The girl then approaches his face, and the guy thinks, why is it her? And the main character just shuts his mouth and claims that she told him to be careful because what will happen if someone hears him? The guy only apologizes after that. Mirabel turns around at this time and says that they are quite isolated, but still there is no need to make so much noise. However, when she turns around to the guy, she sees that he is already all red. After which the young lady asks if everything is okay because Jeffrey looks like he has a fever, so the girl asks if he has a cold. However, the young man replies that no, and that the days are simply hot. He also suggests focusing better on his wounds, and the young lady then agrees and tells him to stand still. And then the main character looks at the hand and the monitor lizard and thinks that the guy is not at all okay. And the young lady also thinks that now is not the best time to ask, but she still doesn't understand how to use divine power because she never learned how to do it. The girl understands that she needs to think about what the priest was doing when they shot her mother, but then she suddenly hears a voice, which comes from the clone and tells the girl to concentrate divine power on her fingertips, and the young lady asks Vivra whether this. The boy hearing this asks what the main character is talking about and says that it's nothing. The snake continues and claims that for the girl it will be easy because she is her chosen one, so let her try. And Mirabel then realizes that she needs to focus the power on her fingertips and tries to do it. And when the young lady touches the guy's cheek with these instructions, the area near her hand will begin to glow. And when the young lady finishes, the boy says that he no longer hurts in other places too, so he immediately turns to the main character and asks if she did it. Those things with the white color and everything. The main character replies that yes, and this is her first time healing someone. The girl thinks that she's glad because the guy was able to heal, but she should be more careful because he is also a child, and if he starts asking a million questions, then everything will go wrong. So now the young lady asks him not to tell anyone about this and asks if he can. The guy then agrees and says that if Mirabel says so, then he won't say a word. After which the girl thinks that when this is over, she needs to ask other questions. Therefore, she turns to Jeffrey and asks why he came to her, or is he really ready to pay off the debt of 2 potatoes? The guy then says that in fact he is there for another reason, and he himself thinks that he has to pay a lot to the young lady, but he claims that he forgot about the potatoes and apologizes. The main character then says that it's not worth it, and she just assumed that he was here for this. Well, then the young lady suggests continuing the conversation somewhere else. Then she tells him to follow her because the girl knows where to sit, and the guy agrees, after which he takes her hand and the two of them head to the fountain, after which the young lady claims that it seems safer there because people rarely go in this direction. And then the girl asks what reason Jeffrey was talking about, and although she doesn't want to mess with her body, she's just really interested because the guy risked so much to get there. It means it's something serious. Jeffrey claims that he wanted to thank her, but the main character asks why, and the boy claims that he heard that it was the Grand Duke who revoked the reward for him, and he even paid off his debt to Gaiman, so he did not understand why he was showing such kindness to him, a stranger, so he visited the guards of the House of Crichton several times. He eventually ran into the Grand Duke himself, and the main character now asks if he really met her grandfather. The guy then remains silent for a while, and the young lady asks why he suddenly fell silent. Well, the young man then claims that he harbored the same question to the Duke as the guards, and he said that he did it for the sake of his granddaughter. Then he realized his situation, took pity, and decided to help. Mirabel understands that she asked her grandfather to cancel the reward, but she didn't even think that he would also pay off the debt, because now she is surprised. The boy claims that then he became interested in who this granddaughter was, and he decided to find out her identity. That's when he saw the young lady a few days ago. The main character rode in a carriage from the Creighton mansion to the Temple of Duana. The young lady then says that it was him after all, and the guy agrees. He claims that the young lady said that her name was Mirabel Hale, but he could not even imagine that it was actually her. However, after thinking, I realized that besides her, no one else could ask him to help him. And her story is about a trip to the capital to meet her grandfather, and also the story of the long-awaited union of Duke Credo with his daughter and granddaughter 10 years later confirmed his assumption. The main character now claims that he is right, and she asked her grandfather to remove the award from him because the guy does not deserve it. The young man then turns to Mirabel and says that he doesn't even know how to thank her, or that the potatoes she gave him were already a divine blessing. But the main character now says that a simple thank you is more than enough because that's all she needs. However, then she feels something dripping onto her hand, and when he looks at the young man's face, he sees that he is all in tears. Mirabel realizes that at first she was kind to him because she knew that one day he would become the king of mercenaries. But the girl knows what it is like to struggle for life alone as an orphan, and it's cruel, painful, and scary. Jeffrey tried to stay strong all his life, but he too was the one who was orphaned overnight, and the guy continued to hold back tears and grief, breathing heavily in her arms until he was finally able to speak. The young man, all red, apologizes for this and thanks her, and the main character immediately remembers when he thanked her for the potatoes. Then he claims that if he becomes sad again, he shouldn't hold back his tears and hands the guy a handkerchief. The young man then looks at him and then, with a smile on his face, asks if he can keep it. The main character then says that of course he can take it too, and looking at the guy's smile, he thinks that it's nice to see him cheerful again. But the young man then turns to Mirabel and asks why she is looking at him like that. And the girl said that he could keep the scarf, so there is no turning back. The main character then just smiles and says that she's not thinking about that, and she just really likes his hair because it's beautiful. However, this makes the young man even more embarrassed, to which the main character laughs. And the guy then asks what is funny, and is she really laughing at him? The main character then denies it and says that she laughed because he was so charming, and that's what she meant by his beautiful hair. The guy then asks if this is true, and also if she likes this color. And the main character strokes his head and says that they shimmer in the moonlight like silver, and it is very beautiful and also unusual. The guy then just turns around and remains silent, and the young lady wonders if he is shy. But Jeffrey then turns to Mirabelle and seriously says that she is also very beautiful. The main character then thinks in shock what he and most likely the boy is talking about hair. The young lady claims that she has regular brown hair, but Jeffrey then replies that she does not. After all, Mirabelle is especially beautiful because she is herself. The main character then smiles and thinks that she is confident. He is just saying this because he is grateful, but it is very nice of him. So the young lady thanks her friend with a smile on her face, and he then looks away and also claims that he simply told the truth, after which they are silent for a while, and then the main character turns to Jeffrey, and he asks if he would like to stay with her. The main character then says that she wonders if he wants to stay at the Crichton mansion, and the guy already puts his hand on his heart and thinks that he was thinking about something else. Mirabelle thinks that one day Jeffrey will become the king of mercenaries, but until that day, his world will surely be full of difficulties and sadness. The young lady invited him to stay at the mansion because it seemed to her that he would be much better taught fencing here. However, the girl understands that the point is not just to make him stronger. The guy is only 11 years old, and she would prefer that he not face such difficulties if they can be avoided. Therefore, now she asks what the young man thinks, and if he doesn't mind, then she will put in a good word with her grandfather. After all, if he decides to stay, he will be taught how to be a knight. The guy then thanks her for the offer, but says that he is happy with everything. However, the main character then asks, a little surprised, why they don't think it's better for him to stay there. But the young man then looks at the starry sky and claims that there is something he wants to do, and he no longer wants to be indebted to Mirabelle. After all, first the potatoes, then the reward, and even his remaining debt. Therefore, the young man asks how he can get more from her if he is not given anything in return. But Mirabelle tells Jeffrey not to think of it as another debt. However, the young man says that everything is really all right because he can handle it himself, so she shouldn't worry about him. The main character thinks that he is only 11, so he doesn't need to be so independent, after which she asks if the guy is sure because she won't propose twice, and the young man replies that he is sure. Well, then he says that the girl can do something else for him. The main character then thinks about what he is talking about, and the young man with silver hair asks if she will allow him to visit her from time to time. And the main character with a sincere smile says that of course, yes. Well, next time let him arrange a meeting, because if Jeffrey is caught sneaking into the territory of the nobles, then everything could end badly, and the young man then agrees. But then someone calls Mirabelle, and the girl realizes that it is her mother. The guy then gets up from his seat and says that Mirabelle needs to go to her because she's probably worried. He'll figure it out on his own, so don't let her worry, but the main character is asked if he's leaving already. The guy replies that yes, and he is going to Karen because the Merchant Guild is heading there tonight. The main character then claims that she was going to ask him to stay at least for the night, but he thinks that nothing can be done if he has plans. After which she tells the boy to come whenever he wants, and just let her know in advance. The young man then agrees, but tells her not to be angry with him for coming too often. The young lady then smiles and says that of course she won't, after which the boy turns around and says that then they will see each other later. The young lady then asks if he knows that he can leave through the main gate, and the guy claims that the next time he has an appropriate invitation, he will use it. But then Jeffrey seems to want to say something else, so he recovers. But he still doesn't dare to do this, so he just runs away and says that it doesn't matter, and then says goodbye to her. The main character also says goodbye to him, but then silently watches and wonders what he was going to say. The guy, walking through the forest, thanks Mirabelle in his thoughts, and she thinks that the next time she comes to her, she promises that by then she will be much better. After the grand ball, the Grand Duchy returned to its usual daily routine, however. Small changes took place in the life of the young lady. The biggest one was the morning training, and after 2 dull, long weeks of endurance training, Uncle Brian finally handed her the wooden sword. The classes, of course, became much more difficult, but the joy of learning from the one who had reached the pinnacle of fencing was reward enough to endure all the difficulties, and she was even happy with such intense training. The girl increasingly liked the idea of becoming a knight and receiving a noble title. Viscountess Maynard says that a noblewoman without a title is usually doomed to spend the rest of her life as someone's wife. And considering the possible prospects that await her after the successful defense of the Grand Duchy of Creton, this is not a bad choice at all. Now someone is reaching out to Mirabelle, and he asks if she also went to training this morning. The girl replies that, yes, Uncle Brian finally allowed her to pick up a wooden sword. Mom then tells the baby not to stress and take breaks. The uncle then correctly asks what kind of breaks, because Cornelia does not seem to understand what an incredible talent her daughter has in sword fighting. And it only took her a day to learn some of the techniques that Elliot spent days trying to master, and the girl is very gifted. Therefore, it is possible that she takes an example from Guile, a woman, when she says that her little Mirabelle and Guile are very similar. But then, as always, the cousin bursts into the conversation and says that even if she is as good as the man says, she is still a little girl, and he asks what will happen if the baby gets hurt. After all, she may be able to heal wounds and injuries with the help of her divine power, but it would be better for her not to receive them at all. The woman then says that she is indeed a little worried about Mirabelle's safety, and Hertz also agrees, but claims that she wants to support her choice. No, then he says it's wonderful. But then he turns to Cornelia and asks if any of the gentlemen attracted her attention at the ball. The woman then says that this is very sudden, and the uncle says that he understands that she still has feelings for Guile, but he is very upset that she remains alone after so many years. Cornelia then thanks her uncle for his concern, but claims that she does not intend to date anyone because Mirabelle needs her. The main character then understands why he offered to fall and believe the man is trying to sell not only her, but also her mother. After which Mirabelle turns to Uncle Daniel and says that he seems to really want her and her mother to get married. The young lady then wonders if he really thought she would just sit back and watch. And the Duke then turns to Daniel and asks what the girl is talking about, to which he does not know what to answer. The young lady then claims that her cousin told her that Marquis Baev has a 16-year-old son who could be a good match for her. And the staff also said that the marriage would further strengthen the influence of the House of Crito. After this, the man just chuckles and claims that the son of Marquis Baev is an exceptional young man, and he mentioned him only as a potential opportunity. Well, the main character then claims that he also mentioned Count Khalid and Duke George. The Duke, when he hears George's last name, becomes very wary and asks if his brother spoke about such a thing. Daniel then doesn't know how to get out and says that he has a huge network of people, and he thought it would be nice to ask him to help them find Mirabelle a good person, because he thinks that little Mirabelle misunderstood what he was trying to say. However, Elliot then says that this is not true, and he heard it too. On the day when the cousin first saw Mirabelle, he called these candidates her potential suitors. The great-uncle then smiles nervously and says that there must have been a misunderstanding there too. And his heart breaks at the thought that his great-nephew and niece think so poorly of him. The Duke claims that whatever Daniel's intentions, he warns him to avoid talking about such things in the presence of the children, because he does not intend to force any of the children to marry Cornelia. After which he turns to Elliot and Mirabelle and says that he hopes they can forgive Daniel. After all, he must have made a slip that made them think the worst, but he certainly had no malicious intent. Elliot then says that they seem to have made a mistake and asks for forgiveness. Herb also states that the next time his brother raises such issues with the children, he will have no choice but to intervene, after which he asks if Daniel understood. But the man only claims that he spoke only out of love for his niece and great-niece, so he will avoid this topic, as he says, in order to avoid further misunderstandings. The main character then thinks that the Duke has made his point of view clear, and Daniel will no longer be able to say anything to her mother, and Elliot may also be able to help her in the future, because he will describe himself to Daniel and knows a lot about the house and the mansion. A short time later, the guy is already heading back to his room, but suddenly someone turns to him, and he tells him to wait. It turns out to be Mirabelle. The guy then asks what brought her there, and the main character replies that she would like to ask about something, and the guy asks what it is. Well, the young lady then turns to the servants and asks if they will leave them because she wants to talk to Elliot alone. When they leave, the boy tells the girl to post it, and the main character then puts her hand on his shoulder and asks what he thinks about his cousin Daniel. The guy is a little surprised by this question, and he asks if she is talking about Daniel, and if so, does she mean her cousin? The young lady replies that yes, and says that it was him, but she herself understands that first she needs to calm down. Elliot turns to her and says that Mirabelle will get in trouble if she calls him that. The guy also turns around and says that they are not even that far from the mansion, and what will happen if someone hears. The young lady then says, okay, and from now on she will be more careful. But then she asks that anyway. How does the guy feel about him, and does he like him? The young man replies that of course not, and the girl knows what kind of person he is. But then suddenly he looks at the young lady and asks why she is suddenly asking him this. The main character sighs after this and says that this is a long story, but she will try to tell it briefly, right up to the day when she and her mother arrived at the mansion and they sent letters to grandfather. After all, it looks like someone intercepted the letters so that grandfather would never see them. The guy then claims that he heard from his aunt that she sent letters to her grandfather asking for forgiveness and asks if the girl talks about them. After the main character answers that yes, the guy claims that these letters were sent through travelers and someone else, and she said that perhaps someone lost them along the way because this is not uncommon. The main character then says that, yes, you can't argue with that, but asks Elliot to listen. After all, my mother wrote at least 2 letters every week, and if at least one of these letters had reached my grandfather, they would have been reunited much earlier. However, none of them made it to the mansion, and each time they entrusted letters to different mercenaries and merchants, and they all managed to get lost. So the girl asks if this seems like a coincidence. The young man then claims that this sounds strange, and she has been sending these letters for years, but none of them have arrived. The main character claims that she thinks someone from the mansion intercepted the letters to prevent her mother from returning to Crichton's house. Well, the guy then claims that, if it were so, then Duke Creto would have already taken up this issue and the culprit would have already been skinned alive. The young lady then claims that she talked to him about it once, but in the end, he did reunite with his mother, and he doesn't seem to think that anyone in the mansion is capable of such a thing. The guy then says that this is understandable, but then asks what does this all have to do with his great-uncle Daniel, and the guy when he asks if the girl suspects him and thinks that he stole all these letters. Mirabelle replies that yes, she thinks that although for her it is more than a suspicion, because in the future she alone saw it with her own eyes. And the man himself said this, and also explained why he did this. Back then, the young lady could only listen, but only she knows about it. And now the girl looks at her cousin and wonders whether he will believe her even if she tells him everything in detail. But if Danielle finds out about everything, then all her plans will go to waste. The boy now says that if what Mirabelle says is true, then why would his great-uncle do such a thing? Because he would not do anything like that without a reason. But the main character then says that perhaps there is a relationship with the throne involved. After all, when her mother broke off her engagement to Crown Prince James Castro, the ties between the House of Creto and the throne were seriously disrupted. But now, everything is different, and the main character asks if the guy understands what she means. Returning to the mansion, her mother personally visited the emperor and asked for forgiveness, after which the empress and crown prince attended their welcome banquet. The guy then says that this is true, and the girl even became friends with the crown prince. The baby replies that now that their connection with the throne has been restored, if something terrible happens to the House of Cretan, they can count on the throne to come to their aid. Well, the guy then asks what she means by something terrible, and is her great-uncle going to do something terrible to their house? However, the guy also claims that this is impossible because not only the grandfather protects the Crichton house, and as long as his father is there, nothing bad will happen. The main character understands that Uncle Brian, of course, can repel any threat to the house, even from Daniel. But she understands that he was not there when everything collapsed in the future. And the young lady understands that there is no way to know what happened between now and then. But most likely, Daniel developed his plan when he learned that Uncle Brian would not be there to stop him. The main character now claims that she knows, but it wouldn't hurt to conduct a little investigation. And if the letters were really stolen, then they could find out who did it. And if not, then they can be sure that no one in your mansion is trying to stop them, because this is a win-win option. The guy then claims that she is right, and if someone intercepted Auntie's letters, then they must find out who exactly. After which the main character takes the guy by the hand and says that this is where she needs him. The young lady claims that she doesn't know the people who work at the mansion or what they do, so it would be very helpful if he could narrow down the list of people who could be involved. The guy then says that, of course, he will find out who could have received the letter at any moment and will let her know when they finish the list. The main character then thanks Elliot with a smile on her face, and the guy says that it's nothing and he'll just have to be careful. The main character understands that it's good that the guy agreed to help her after they made the list. Then you will need to visit Uncle Brian because grandfather would not agree to investigate their servants, and it will be easier to convince Uncle Brian if he finds out that Elliot is also involved in this. Once they find the evidence, they will need adults who can interrogate potential suspects. And now the young man just watches the girl deep in thought. Then he turns to Mirabelle and claims that she has no idea. What a dark and tense place the mansion had been until he and his aunt returned. And he heard that it wasn't always like this, at least while his mother was around. Well, she fell into eternal sleep when he was about the same age as she, and since then it's simply stuffy for the water driver to be around. However, when he and his aunt moved, the guy finally felt at home again, and it was warm there, and he also hadn't laughed so much for a long time. Therefore, the young man, stroking the main character on the head, says that he is glad that they are back, and the main character thinks that she is happy too. When the young lady once again went to Viscountess Maynard's class, the maid asked the lady if she had said that she needed to clean the room. The young lady then asks what happened next, and the maid claimed that they said the stairs were so spotless, so let her stop. But suddenly, the main character hears a snake calling to her and immediately stops, after which the snake crashes into her. The snake claims that it speaks directly to awareness, and the time has come to tell it its story. The main character just turns around and asks the army if Mirabelle is listening. The girl realizes that there is no one else around them, and the maid asks Milady if she is okay. The snake wilts a little and says that Mirabelle is beginning to hurt her feelings. Mirabelle only turns to the maid and says that it's okay, and moreover, she has a request to Anita. The maid then tells Milady to ask, and the main character claims that she would love to drink apple juice. And the maid immediately agrees and then leaves, and the snake once again turns to Mirabelle. The girl just sighs and says that she was with someone so she couldn't answer. But don't let Vivra be upset. From me, then, you understand what the girl was worried about, and claims that she does not need to speak out loud to communicate with her while she is wearing the pendant. The main character then looks at the decorations, and the snake claims that their minds are connected, so let her try to think about what she wants to say. The young lady then thinks about something about the change, says that she can hear her, and the girl thinks that this is incredible. After all, they are actually talking to each other. Vivra claims that everyone seems to react the same way. After all, Pleon said the same thing when he realized this. But this goes without saying because the girl is now a priestess. The main character then thinks what kind of priestess she is. But suddenly she slips on the stairs and almost falls, but manages to hold on to the railing. The snake tells the child to be careful because these steps seem very clean and slippery. The main character then agrees, but then puts her hand on the book again, and she says that something else is more important because what Vivra just called her. The snake claims that she called the girl a priestess and asks why she was surprised. After all, Pleon became a saint by merging with her, and as long as Mirabelle is with her, she will also be a priestess. The girl then thinks that this is so, because Pleon became a saint of Douana's temple by accepting Vivra's request, and this is a little confusing, but the girl is now a priestess. The snake at this time claims that the time has come to discuss the Black Dragon in more detail and let the girl take her to the temple of the goddess Douana, because the priests there already consider her theirs. The main character then thinks what exactly the snake should tell about the Black Dragon. And Vivra claims that she will tell when they arrive at the temple, and it will also be better if she discusses this with others in the temple. The girl then says that okay, that means she needs to go to the temple. Therefore, she claims to be suitable, but not today, and then asks me why not. Well, the main character then slams the table and states in her thoughts that she has a lesson today. And the girl thinks that she will try tomorrow, so she will go as soon as the opportunity arises. The young lady understands that this is the time because she has many questions, which she wants to ask, and a little time later she still manages to find the time, and the young lady is already heading through the forest in a carriage. The girl then looks out the window while the maids talk to each other, and then he turns to Vivra and the snake asks what's the matter. The young lady then grabs the pendant and says she has a question, and the girl says that Saint Pleon he became ashes as soon as he gave her this pendant. Therefore, she asks if Vivir remembers about this. The snake says that of course she is a guardian dragon, untouched by the blessing of oblivion, unlike humans, and everything that she has ever experienced is invariably preserved in her memory. The main character then asks what will happen to Saint Pleon. After all, in the future, where she came from, he should become a saint, but time has turned back. And the young lady now claims that she is with Pleon, gave her this pendant, and if she is, according to the snake priestess, then what is the fate of Pleon? But the snake tells the child not to worry. After all, he had always been a devoted servant of Douana, and he considered the fact that he was appointed a saint of the goddess Dwana to be a great honor, despite the fact that it was in a different timeline. And the main character now thinks that it turns out that he knows that at some point he was a saint. In a good way, he should have forgotten about everything that happened in the future, but thanks to the blessing of the goddess Dwana, he keeps the memories of that fateful day when they failed, and all this was necessary in order to defeat Calypso. Now, the main character says that she understands. Well, then the maid turns to the lady and asks if she said something, and the girl says nothing. But she thinks that she's sorry anyway, but she probably won't be able to find out much information from him. But it's still better than starting from the beginning. A little time later, the main character already arrives at the Temple of Dwana. Another of the priests meets her there and greets her. He also claims that his name is Lionel, and he is a priest of the Temple of the goddess Dwana. The guy claims that the archbishop and other priests are waiting for her in the meeting room, so he asks to be allowed to escort her. After which the main character bows and tells His Holiness that she is Mirabelle Credo. Well, he'll ask her to call her Mirabelle. After this, the girl tells him to kindly accompany her. And when the young lady heads down the corridor, she looks at everything. And when they pass by other priests, they bow to her. And the main character thinks that she has never been so formally welcomed into the temple, and does everyone already know that she accepted Vivra's proposal? The priest then points to a large door and states that this is a meeting room, and as before, only the girl can pursue further. The maid then asks, a little surprised, what they are talking about. One of them turns to the lady and asks if she will be okay if she goes alone, and the girl replies that everything will be fine. The priest also tells them to be sure that nothing dangerous will happen. Then he knocks on the door and it is opened. The main character, looking at this, understands that they can enter, after which they do so, and everyone in the room rises from their seats and claims that they were waiting for the priestess. When they approach one man whose costume is different from the one the main character thinks, is this really the archbishop and he is Pleon from this timeline? The man then bows, and the snake thinks it's great to see him again, but he probably can't hear her now. The main character then also bows and says that it is nice to meet his lordship, and also claims that her name is Mirabelle Creto. The man then claims that he is Archbishop Baron, and he asks to be allowed to greet them on behalf of everyone present. The man brings his fingers to her forehead and says a greeting as in a temple. The main character then thinks that this is amazing because she feels lighter, and the man then offers to sit down and claims that he should introduce the lady to the others, after which the girl agrees and sit down at her place, and the man claims that before they begin, he would like to thank her for the decision, which, he is sure, was not easy for her. And normally they would introduce the new priestess to the world through a public ceremony, but given their circumstances, he's sure the girl will understand why they decided to skip such a formality. The young lady claims that everything is fine, and that she has arrived there to discuss the details that she needs to know, and if his lordship has no objection, can they proceed with this now? The man then thanks for your understanding and states that then they will get straight to the point. After all, as the girl knows, there are those who are trying to remove the seal from Calypso. It was her great-uncle Daniel Credo. The man also asks if the girl heard about this from Vivra, and she replies that yes. The man also says that what they must fight is this force that Daniel Credo collected while in the service of the Black Dragon, and at the moment they are looking for traces of these agents because they move extremely secretly, so it was difficult to track their leader. But the main character says that now they know about him, and the man says that this is exactly so. And most likely Daniel Credo personally possesses the guard stone with which the Black Dragon Calypso is sealed. Therefore, the man claims that they must either stop Daniel Credo, take the stone from him, or put him into eternal sleep. The man claims that, unfortunately, he from the future could not find any information except that the leader was Daniel Credo, and in that future he failed, and the Calypso seal was destroyed. In order to correct his failure, Vivra turned back time and finally found the one most suitable for this task. And this person is precisely the priestess Mirabelle. The main character understands that, apparently, he is suffering, and he needs to accept his defeat and also entrust this task to her. Therefore, the thought of this must weigh heavily on him. The snake then says that she would like Pleon not to torture himself like that, and the main character after this turns to the priest Pleon, and he asks what His Holiness wants to say. And the young lady claims that Vivra wants her to tell him to let go of his pain. The man then smiles bitterly and thanks her. He claims that he must discuss the details with her in person later. And now I would like to discuss the events that will begin to occur from now on. Vivra thanks Mirabelle at this time. After this, they discussed the further development of their plans. One of the priests suggested that they report Daniel to the throne or plunge him into eternal sleep. But this idea was quickly cancelled due to significant difficulties in its implementation. Daniel Credo's title and status should not be underestimated, nor should the power of the Black Dragon. And also the events that happened in the future that they experienced were things that only they could know about, and they understood them. These two didn't know anything. Apart from the fact that the main culprit is Daniel Credo, therefore we are back to square one. The girl claims that even though they cannot see the answer now, they must wait for the right time and continue to look for it. After all, Daniel's coup will occur in 14 years from now, and after that the revival of Calypso will occur. In the meantime, they must keep an eye on Daniel and prepare for all unforeseen circumstances, because in fact, there is no way to stop the implementation of the plan. That's as a last resort. She must personally put Daniel Credo into eternal sleep. After all, she has Lespide, and this is a sword forged from the bone of the dragon guard Vivra. The man is then a little surprised and tells Her Holiness to wait because Lespida's body will really allow her to openly confront Daniel. But in order to plunge him into eternal sleep, she needs not only the blade itself, but also excellent skills in wielding it. The young lady is then a little puzzled and asks what he is talking about, and will it really not be enough to just pierce him? The young lady understands that in the past she was put into a crippled sleep by Daniel's soldiers, but she cannot deny that it was precisely the skills that she lacked. The young lady realizes that mastering Lespide perfectly means that she must become even stronger than in the past. Well, then the girl remembers something and claims that she understands his concern that her fencing skills are not good enough. However, now she is only 9 years old, she will be able to become stronger and also work hard at it. The girl also claims that it is possible if she becomes as strong as a human, called the King of Mercenaries. This will calm them down. His Holiness is then silent for a bit, and the young lady just smiles, and the man then asks if the girl means Jeffrey Coleman. After all, someone as strong as he can definitely handle it. The girl claims that she will become like him and even stronger, after which the man claims that it will be just perfect if she succeeds, and if something goes wrong, they can always bring Coleman to their side, so let the young lady not burden herself. The girl then smiles and says that she will keep this option in mind too. She understands that the next time she sees him, she will have to try to improve the relationship. But fortunately, so far, she has made only a good impression on him. The man then asks how they feel about summing up their meeting now because they still have time and hasty actions could jeopardize their activities. The young lady says she agrees and then they get up and the girl states that they need to gather more information, but that's all for today. However, then someone turns to Lady Mirabelle and says that if she ever needs help moving forward, then let her come to Dwana's temple at any time because everyone will be only happy to help her. The main character then also folds her hands and thanks the elders, after which she says goodbye as is customary in the temple. Well, then the girl claims that she is a little embarrassed to say this so soon, but she really needs their help. A short time later, the girl already apologizes for disturbing her. The message then asks what she believes is not worth it, because knowledge of how to control divine powers will be a huge help on her path, and in truth, they wanted to offer it to her from the very beginning. The young lady then thinks that when it comes to recovery and mom, the sooner the better and the skills will be incredibly useful. The snake at this time claims that if the girl learns how to use divine powers, it will give her more freedom, and she is waiting for it. The main character thinks what freedom means, and will it really become the same as if the Calypso seal is destroyed? Vivra regrettably argues that this is not so in freedom. She meant freedom of movement outside the pendant, and more precisely, this pendant contains only the soul, but her body. In fact, she sleeps in the depths of the existence of this universe, and her seal should not be destroyed until someone finds her body. Once the young lady has a better grasp of her powers, she will be able to extract her from this pendant and materialize her soul. Then they won't have to communicate through this artifact. The main character then thinks that materializing Vivra through divine powers sounds quite tempting, and this pendant is not very suitable for an adult lady. At this time, someone turns to Miss Mirabelle and says that they have arrived. The baby then says yes, and the priest then asks her to come in. And when they already enter the room, He claims that in this place from now on she will study. The young lady then asks if she should come there for the next class. The priest says that such a quiet environment will make it easier for her to concentrate on her powers, and the girl thinks that she feels something strange, but is not sure what exactly. And the man then offers to start and then asks if the lady could show him her palms. He claims that Miss Mirabelle will feel something on her fingertips and let her remember this feeling. The main character realizes that she felt this before, and this outgoing warm glow appeared when she was treating Jeffrey's wound. The man claims that if she remembers this feeling, then let her try to pass the same energy throughout her body. And at first, it won't be easy, but let her try as much as she needs. After which, the young lady tries to concentrate and find divine powers in her body. But then the snake from the pendant turns to her and asks if she can give her advice. After which, the girl agrees, and Vivra tells her not to try to find something else in the energy. The young lady then thinks about these words, but thinks that Father Lionel said that she must find divine powers within herself. However, the girl thinks that it is better for him to concentrate first and start with his fingertips, and then check how the energy feels. The girl realizes that she is warm and soft, and then realization comes to her that Vivra was right, and energy itself is divine powers, so the girl should not look for something else in it. After which the young woman enthusiastically claims that she found her, and the priest, with a smile on his face, asks if this is true. The young lady realizes that she is bright, but not dazzling, and the warm energy is incredibly relaxing and relieves all her fatigue. The priest then says that he must say that he is impressed about the size, then says that the girl is a fast learner and will soon be able to improve. The girl then thinks that she wants more strength, and the ball then grows a little. But suddenly the energy begins to scatter in all directions, and the young lady wonders what is happening. The priest screams for the lady. Mirabelle was cautious. However, it's too late because the girl is being pushed away by the forces of The maid immediately approaches her mistress and asks if she is injured. But the girl replies that no, and she is fine, and then asks how Anita and Kalina, and whether they are injured. The priest then claims that the divine powers exploded because they were not evenly distributed, and this is not dangerous since they are harmless in nature. But he had never seen them concentrated in one place so strongly as to explode, and thought that this was only possible in theory. The man claims that he would say that the girl has successfully learned how to sense and release her divine powers, and that is great. So next time they will practice the art of controlling them. He also hands the young lady the ball and tells her to take it. The main character, looking at him, extends her hand and says that this is the crystal ball from the room. The solution says it's real, and Miss Mirabelle hasn't forgotten. The main character then remembers what happened in that room and thinks how she could forget, because in an instant the man became ashes. The priest claims that crystal can hold divine powers, and that is how the young lady was able to meet him that day. And although a crystal of this size cannot do such incredible things, it will definitely help her contain her enormous power. The main character then thanks him with a smile on her face and says that she will handle him with care. The man then suggests trying to transform the energy into another form now, without letting go of the ball from his hands, and you can start from the cube. And after a little practice, the young lady finally sighs, and the priest claims that the next classes will take place in 6 days. The young lady then agrees and thanks him. But then someone else comes up to them and asks if the priestess has finished Mirabelle. It turns out Father Pleon. The priest believes that there are many issues that the two of them need to discuss. Therefore, he asks to forgive him. The main character then still turns to Kalina and Anita and asks if they will go first and prepare the carriage for departure, to which they agree. The man claims that he was terribly worried that his plunging into eternal sleep after handing over the pendant could shock the girl. The young lady then claims that she would be lying if she said that she was not surprised at all. Well, she thought that there was a reason for that. The Holy Father says that the pendant is a sacred artifact and only saints can touch it. Thus, in order to deliver it to the young lady, there was only one option for him from the future, and that was to deliver it to the girl personally with the help of divine powers and the crystal room. If he didn't have memories of the future, it might have confused her more, so he's glad he was able to explain it to her. The young lady then turns to her father and asks Togo not to worry about her. After all, this time they will serve as priests and not saints, and together they will stop the revival Calypso. After this, the young lady in the carriage rides back to the mansion, and when she arrives, She thinks that she's finally home. But she didn't even imagine that she would spend the whole day in the temple, and that all this practice to control her strength was exhausting. The girl thinks that she can't wait to wash herself and rest a little, but suddenly she sees someone, and he really thinks that pathetic boy sitting on the ground, this is the one she's thinking about. After which the little girl comes up to him and asks if this is His Highness. The guy then just smiles and greets Mirabelle, after which they head down the corridor, and the main character asks if he says that the Majesty came to visit her mother, the prince accompanied her, and the boy says that's exactly what it is, and with a smile on his face, claiming that they were friends and the woman was going to see her friend, but he wanted to see his. Mirabelle then realizes that she didn't know that the guy was so sociable, and how at the ball he suddenly suggested becoming friends. She was a little surprised, because they were only seeing each other for the second time. Now the young lady invites His Highness to sit down, because Kalina will soon come up with refreshing drinks, and the boy agrees. But when he sits down, he asks where the girl was all day, because he waited for a long time. The main character then replies that she was in Duena's temple, and the boy then asks why. Mirabelle claims that there were some matters that needed to be sorted out, and she could not share the details. Well, the boy immediately asks what kind of things they were, and why she had to do something in the temple, because this had never happened to him. The main character understands that children his age are interested in everything. However, she still turns to His Majesty and says that her uncle is teaching him fencing. The boy replies that, yes, and he always wants to learn more because she is not boring like other classes, and the little girl claims that she is also learning from him. The young lady realizes that the boy took the bait, and now they are talking about a different topic, and the prince then asks if it's true, because he didn't know that the girl was also training. And the main character claims that, unlike him or Elliot, she has just started and the prince is a little surprised by this. Then he asks what she will say about sparring with him. After all, among children his age, only Elliot can hold the ball, but it is too strong for him. The main character thinks that this is for sure because Elliot trained almost all his life and their sparring probably always ended in the defeat of His Highness, and Elliot is much older than Adrien. Therefore, now the main character turns to the prince and says that he may regret this, but the young man asks why, and Mirabelle claims that because she will win. The guy at the same moment jumps up from his seat and asks what she is talking about, and the girl doesn't know it. Mirabelle understands that if this were her real age, there would be a chance, but inside this little girl lives a mill with vast experience. The boy comes closer to her and asks if the Crichton estate has a hall. The girl replies that yes, there is one, after which the boy immediately grabs her hand and says that then let her take him there. The young lady realizes that she seems to have provoked him too much, and while they are already heading towards the hall, the boy tells the maid not to touch the cookies because he will eat them after the fight. However, when they approach the young lady's uncle, he is very surprised. Elliot is no less shocked by this and screams whether the girl wants to spar with His Highness. Brian then tells His Highness that this is unacceptable because Mirabelle only held the wooden sword for 3 days, and Elliot agrees with his father and then offers to become His Highness's partner in her place. But the prince then claims that Mirabelle has already agreed, and the boy asks in surprise what kind of business this is and is it true? Mirabelle did not refuse. The girl replies that, yes, she thought it would be a good opportunity, after which she turns to her uncle and asks if she can ask him for a favor, and then asks if he can be a judge. The man still tries to dissuade his niece and says that, even though His Highness is younger than her, the girl only fenced for 3 days and he trained for 3 years. So what will happen if she gets seriously injured in sparring? But the main character then tells her uncle that he will watch over them, and she trusts him, and the man then agrees, but says that they should be careful not to hurt each other, and let His Highness also be careful. The young lady then agrees, and the prince also states that he will be careful. A short time later, they are already standing in the middle of the sparring area, and a considerable crowd is gathering around them. Some of them ask if this is acceptable, and the boy claims that everything will be fair and just because he spares no one and his friends are no exception. The girl says that she is glad to hear this because he will be disgraced if he loses. Uncle then states that the sparring will end if one of the parties gives up or is unable to continue, and he also interferes if serious injuries occur, after which they begin to fight. The main character realizes that all the excitement has evaporated and the boy is studying her every move. But his posture is unstable, and he looks too nervous. So based on her experience, people in this state tend to react instinctively without fully understanding the opponent's intention. Then the young lady begins to run towards him and His Highness becomes wary. But then the girl seems to stumble on her way to him. And at the same moment, the young man begins to swing his arms. But the main character understands that this is how everything was planned. Her next actions surprise her uncle. After all, he sees that the young lady is standing in the right stance. And then the little girl completely knocks the sword out of the prince's hands, after which the young man falls to the ground and the main character asks, "Did she win?" After this, the uncle claims that Mirabelle wins and it was amazing. The young lady then wonders if His Highness will be offended. But when he looks at him, the boy only says with admiration what a Mirabelle is strong. But the girl then thinks why her uncle doesn't say anything, because she thought that he would be the most excited. And now she answers to His Highness of the State, because she studied with a good teacher. But when the young lady turns to her uncle, she sees that he is just staring, after which the man turns to Mirabelle. He asks if she can withstand one more round. The young lady at the same moment replies that yes, she can too, after which her uncle says that this is good. And then he turns to Elliot and tells him to bring his wooden sword. The boy then asks if Dad is speaking to him, and he answers here, so let the boy quickly carry him. A little later, the young man comes with his sword. But he says that Mirabelle is only 9 years old, and didn't he see that the girl almost tripped during the fight? But the main character thinks that Elliot still didn't notice, and his uncle understands that she pretended to fall in order to catch Adrien. So the man says Mirabelle says that everything depends entirely on her, and then asks if she wants to spar with Elliot. The young lady understands that she will not lose anything from this sparring, and Elliot is much stronger than any boy his age. And this fight will tell everything about her current level, about her endurance and strength. So the little girl says what she wants, and then asks Elliot for it because she really wants it. After which the boy agrees and says that if she wants it, then let it be. The man raises his hand and says that the rules are the same as before, and then the fight begins. The main character sees that it is noticeable that the guy is not happy about this fight, and she understands him because it was very unexpected. But Mirabelle understands that this is a great opportunity for her. After all, she needs this to take her fencing skills to the next level. And the girl understands that she will do everything possible because then her uncle may reconsider her status. At this time, the boy turns to Mirabelle says that she makes the first move. The main character then asks if he is sure about this, and the boy answers that he is. After which, the young lady clutches the sword tightly in her hands and attacks the guy trying to hurt him. However, the young man deftly repels this blow, and the young lady understands that he is undoubtedly strong. But the girl thinks that she will not succeed and then pushes her cousin. The young man then jumps back and is a little surprised, and the main character asks if Elliot can do everything in his power. The girl understands that now he knows that she is not just a beginner with only a few days of experience. Therefore, the young man now clutches his sword and says that, "Okay, this time everything will be for real, so let the girl take care of you." After which the young man swings with all his might, but the main character, still, he blocks this blow and thinks that now there is no point in using his physical strength, so he should dodge. Then strike, and the young lady does so. Then he grabs the boy's sword and with a deft movement sends him into the air. The guy then looks in shock as his weapon flies away, and the main character screams that nothing is over yet. And when the girl is already putting a sword to his neck, his uncle says that Mirabelle wins. And the main character, a little tired, realizes that she did it. The man claims that he believed that she could win, and the girl really did it. And Elliot says it was incredible. But the girl replies that everything is not so, and it is thanks to her pure luck, because if they had real swords, she would have lost. But the guy says that this is not so, and he didn't even think that Mirabelle snatches the sword from him like that. And he says that he thinks in a real battle there would be many more unpredictable factors than this. And the man then supports his son. They say that this is true, this could happen, and with a real sword you are in a situation on the verge of life and death. Therefore, the guy must try his best because he is already 12, and he lost to a 9-year-old girl. But the young man then gets a little angry and tells his father that he himself is not proud of it. But then the main character notices how the crowd screams and is a little surprised. And when he turns around, he sees that they are rejoicing and screaming that it was amazing. The young lady's uncle tells them to be quiet because they're only scaring his niece, so let them shut their mouths. But they then ask what little Miss Mirabelle just won a fight. Despite the fact that she had only held the sword for a few days before, how can they remain silent? The other guy says that indeed he is witnessing a genius in action. The man grins and says that they are all. Afterwards, they will immediately go about their business. Otherwise, they will train at night, and the knights at the same moment agree and disperse. By the time the young lady and Elliot finished sparring, the sun had begun to set, and Adrien also returned to the palace along with Her Majesty, greatly upset that he had not been able to finish his snack. The girl took a shower and went to the dining room for dinner. But then the main character looks at Daniel's place and thinks where he is, after which she asks her grandfather where her cousin is. The Duke replies that Daniel will be late today because he is at a meeting, and there is an event there that takes place on the 15th of every month and has been going on for 30 years. The Duke claims that he does not know the details, but asks if the girl misses her great-uncle. The young lady only laughs nervously in response to this. Well, then in her thoughts, Vivra asks what she thinks about this. And after all, a social club that has been operating for 30 years looks a little strange. And also, if it was a normal club, then wouldn't my grandfather know about it? Treason then responds that this is indeed strange, and perhaps the man has something to do with Calypso. The main character then thinks that they need to find out about him, and the snake says that he agrees with her. The Duke then turns to her and tells her not to be so strict with Daniel. After all, although sometimes he can speak rudely, he is a caring person at heart. The main character understands that the man has great faith in his brother and has no idea that in the future he will betray him and plunge him into eternal sleep. Brian now turns to his father and asks if he has heard about the prince's visit today. The Duke then answers yes and says that he heard that he came with Her Majesty. The young lady's mother then says that yes, he was there to see Mirabelle, but she had to go to Duana's temple. The girl's uncle then says that Mirabelle returned late in the afternoon and met with the prince, and then they both came to the hall to spar. The Duke then, in shock, asks if Mirabelle was sparring with the prince, to which the uncle answers yes. And based on his observations, he can confidently say that Mirabelle has a God-given talent for fencing. The main character thinks that this is not it, and the man already begins to tell everything about how the girl defeated the prince with one blow, and then even defeated Elliot. The guy also says that it's true because it was amazing, and he was surprised by the way she grabbed his ball and threw it away. The next thing he realized was that her sword was at his throat. And the main character thinks that if she were a real genius, she would not have been put into crippled sleep by Daniel's soldiers, and she simply had more experience than the guy. The Duke then smiles and says that it's clear, and that means Mirabelle really defeated Elliot. But the man also turns to the boy and asks if he felt empty, to which Elliot replies that not at all, and in fact, he felt excited because before her, everyone in this house was too strong for him. And now the guy finally has an equal. The main character then looks at the boy and realizes that they are thinking about the same thing.